Story 1. I asked my uncle to walk me down the aisle instead of my stepdad, but my mom threatened not to come to my wedding. The wedding day arrived, and you won't believe what happened next. So, I, 26F, am getting married to my boyfriend, 28M, of 3 years in a couple of weeks. We have been engaged for the past 7 months, and last week I asked my uncle to walk me down the aisle. My uncle, 55M, is my dad's older brother, and he has pretty much been the only father figure I have had in my life because my biological father passed away when I was just 4 years old, and I barely have any memories of him. My mother, 48F, was a working woman, and as a real estate agent, her work required her to be out for really long hours. So, I would end up spending a lot of time with my uncle and his family, and I honestly think that my uncle, aunt, and my cousins are pretty much my own family. I also love my mother, don't get me wrong, and I value and cherish her for everything that she has done for me my entire life, because I know it couldn't have been easy to raise me without her husband by her side. But I also really love my uncle and his family. So, when I asked him to walk me down the aisle, he agreed in a heartbeat, and we were really happy. But when I told my mom about it, she was not very pleased with my decision. She told me that I should have at least consulted with her once before making such a huge decision because she had hinted to my stepdad that I would ask him, and he might feel hurt. For the record, my stepdad has only been in my life for the last couple of years, and while we get along fine, he and I are not particularly close. So, I don't even know why my mother would hint to him that I would ask him to walk me down the aisle. I don't really think of him as a father figure. To me, he's just my mother's husband and nothing else. I might have even considered if he had made any attempt to be more involved in my life, but that has never happened, so I don't see any reason for me to feel bad for not asking him. He and my mom started dating 8 years ago and have been married for 5, so I was not exactly a kid when I first met him, and unlike my uncle, he has never really played an active role as a parent in my life. I explained all of this to my mother, but she was not happy, and she insisted that I ask my stepdad and replace my uncle because she thought that my uncle would be more understanding. But she had already implied certain things to my stepdad, and she didn't want him to feel left out. I don't know how it's my responsibility to make him feel included, but I stood my ground, and I told my mother that this was not happening. I thought that my uncle deserved to walk me down the aisle, and it was my wedding, so it was ultimately my decision. This happened 3 days ago, and while we were on the phone, she just hung up without bothering to argue with me anymore when I said that it was my decision and she couldn't change my mind. I thought that it would be the end of the argument, but later that day, she paid me a visit and started off on the same topic. That she wanted me to replace my uncle and have my stepdad walk me down the aisle because it would really make him feel good, and eventually we would be able to build a better relationship. It was pretty exhausting because I was already really swamped with work and wedding prep, and this was the last thing that I needed on my plate. So, I was getting too agitated by speaking to her, and our voices rose, and the argument started getting heated. She was extremely stubborn, and I was not going to back down either, so we were just talking in circles, and at one point, she thought it would be a good idea to threaten me by saying that she would not attend the wedding if I did not ask my stepdad to walk me down the aisle and make my uncle step down. I got really pissed off because this was my own mother, and here she was trying to threaten me by saying she wouldn't even attend my wedding, one of the most important days of my life, over something like this. It was very obvious to me that my stepdad's feelings were more important to her than my own, and so, in the heat of the moment, I told her that she was free not to attend my wedding and told her that since she had made up her mind, I guess she was also fine with not meeting a really special guest that I had invited just for her sake. I had been planning to surprise her with this on the day of my wedding by introducing her to this woman. But now I'm not sure if that will be necessary because of her behavior. So, the guest that I'm talking about is pretty much a legend in the real estate arena. She runs one of the biggest real estate firms in the city, and my mother has always looked up to her and had been looking for an opportunity to work with her since she was planning on starting a business of her own. Now, she just so happened to be a really close friend of my mother-in-law since they know each other from college, and when I found out about that connection, I instantly requested my mother-in-law to invite her because I knew that it would make my mother really happy to meet her, and I wanted to surprise her on the day of my wedding by introducing her to this guest. However, when she told me that she would not attend my wedding if I did not ask my stepdad to walk me down the aisle, I had a bit of an outburst, and I guess it was all the stress that was just getting to me. So, I just told her that there was no need for her to be present at the wedding anymore. As soon as I told her, She made a complete 180 and started telling me that now I was being really unfair because she had only said that she would not attend my wedding to get me to ask my stepdad. But she hadn't even known that there would be such a special guest present at the wedding. If she had, she wouldn't be pressuring me to do anything. But I told her that now she had said whatever it is that she had to say, and I already knew that to her. My stepdad's feelings were more important than what I wanted for my wedding, and I was really pissed off at the time. So, I couldn't bring myself to care about how she was feeling about all of this. I asked her to leave since I was already really busy with work and preparing for the wedding, and I couldn't deal with this as well. I told her that at the moment she had really pissed me off, and I had no intention of hearing her out because my blood was spoiling because of the way she was acting, and I just wanted her to clear out so I could think about what I wanted to do. Then I stood up, and even she did, but she started bargaining with me and said that she took back everything that she had said, but she just wanted to be present at the wedding now. However, I was in a really bad mood after the fight that we had had, so I just kept pushing for her to leave, and when she tried to just stand there and argue, I started yelling at her and said that I just wanted her to leave because I was really stressed out and I couldn't deal with this right now. I told her that I really couldn't care less about whether she wanted to attend or not. She had put me in a really difficult position and had been very selfish, so now she had no right to make any demands from me. I told her that I would think about it and talk to her later, but at that moment, I had nothing to say to her, and if she tried to argue even more, it would just make the situation worse for her because I was getting really pissed off by her behavior. She left after a while, but she was looking very unhappy that I had forced her to go without fully committing that I would be open to having her at the wedding. Then I was able to calm down, and after talking to my fiancé on the phone, since he was away on a business trip for a week, I decided that I would think about whether to have her at my wedding after this, because that day itself I was still feeling pretty annoyed with her. The next day when I woke up, I was about to head out to work, and I had thought that I would just contact my mother a couple of days later and try to sort things out, but she just couldn't give me my space to cool down. She turned up at my place in the morning right as I was about to leave for work, and she knew my timings, but she still turned up and started talking to me about whether she would still be invited to the wedding or not. Instead of apologizing, she started trying to justify herself. She told me that my stepdad had apparently been feeling very left out during the wedding prep, and to cheer him up, she had told him that I might ask him to walk me down the aisle, so he has nothing to worry about, and he's just as much a part of the family as anyone else. She also told me that he had always been quite insecure about his place in my life and of my uncle in general, since he seemed to be the man of the family because of how I treated him, and he always felt threatened by him. So, that's why she had implied that I might ask him to walk me on my wedding day. Honestly, I can understand the impulse to tell your partner some white lies to make them feel better about certain things, but I don't know why she had to do it at my expense, even though she knew that I had no intention of ever doing what she had hinted, and she was fully aware of the fact that my stepdad and I were never close. So, she was pretty much setting him up for failure by raising his expectations to an unrealistic degree. On top of that, instead of just apologizing and getting it over with, she kept trying to tell me that she had been insistent on this the other day just because she did not want her husband to feel bad, and after I got married, I would understand why she was acting that way. But her behavior was no reason for me to cut her out of the wedding list altogether because at the end of the day, no matter how much we fought, she was still my mother and she deserves to be there at my wedding. I tried to tell her that I would discuss this with her after I came back home from work, but she told me that I had to commit to her that I would include her and not cut her out of the wedding guest list. I tried to say yes just to shake her off so I could leave for work without getting late, but then she started off yet again about how she wanted me to at least talk to my stepdad and explain to him why I had chosen my uncle because she didn't want to become the bad guy in the situation because of my decision to ask my uncle to walk me down the aisle. That's when I finally lost it because not only was she delaying me for work, but she was also wasting my time with her stupid questions. I had already told her that she was welcome to attend my wedding just to get her off my back, but now she was demanding way too much by saying that I should talk to my stepdad. I had made no promises to him. Why should I be the one to talk to him and break this news to him? In fact, I don't even think that I need to tell him about the wedding at all. It's not like I'm discussing what I'm planning to do on my wedding day with all the guests. Am I? So why should I extend a special courtesy to him? To me, he's just like any other guest. So, while we were standing in the doorway, I told my mother to leave me alone because I had finally had enough of her. I said that she was wasting my time and I couldn't understand that she was really desperate to make sure that my stepdad felt validated. But it was not my responsibility to validate his feelings, it was hers, and I don't care how she did it, but she was in no position to make any demands from me. She started off on motherhood, saying that she had raised me on her own and that this was the least I could do for her. Then I decided to call her out on it and reminded her that she had never done it all on her own at all. She wouldn't have been able to get to this place in her career had it not been for all the help that she had received from my grandparents, my uncle, and his family. So, this BS that she had raised me all by herself was not something I was willing to buy. She then started calling me ungrateful, and I finally told her that now I had made up my mind, and I was sure that I did not want her at my wedding, and then I shook her off, headed to my car, and drove away as quickly as I could. It took a long time to cool down, but even after that, she did not leave me alone and kept trying to call me while I was on my way to work. So, as soon as I pulled up at my workplace, I blocked her and tried to focus on the day ahead. But even that was pretty pointless because when I came back home, I realized that she was still there waiting on the doorstep of my house. As soon as she saw me, she ran up to me and said that she knew I couldn't possibly have been serious about not having her at my wedding. But by then, I had had it, and I told her that I was definitely serious, and judging by the way she was acting, it was unlikely that I would change my mind before the wedding. I told her that she was acting unhinged, and she needed to get out of my yard. Unfortunately, my fiancé was also away at the time, so I couldn't even count on him to rescue me from the situation, and she just stood there trying to reason with me, but I kept telling her to leave me alone, and eventually I just burst out and I told her that I would call the cops on her if she didn't, and I even had my phone out so she knew I was serious. That was when she started crying and said that I was being really heartless, and she couldn't believe that I was treating her this way in spite of everything that she had done for me. I told her that I didn't want things to turn out like this, but she has been forcing my hand for the last couple of days, and now I really don't have any other option. She has been getting on my very last nerve, and I needed her to leave me alone. So, after crying, she finally left, and it has been a couple of days since then, but now I feel kind of bad. I have discussed all of this with my fiancé, and he thinks that I did what was necessary, but even then, I feel bad about it, and neither of us has any clue how to deal with the situation because the guilt is absolutely overwhelming. He came back last night, and we were finally able to sit down together and talk about what I have been going through. It's obvious that I'm very stressed because of the wedding prep, and I've also been taking up a lot of extra load at work, so that might have made me extra emotional, and it's the same with him as well. But at the same time, the way that my mother had been acting was quite unreasonable, so we really don't know if what I did was the right thing or not, or if it was just something that was stress-induced, and if I needed to apologize to my mom for behaving this way or not. We just genuinely have no idea what to do. So, we are here to ask for your help to sort out this situation. Am I the A for telling my mother that she is no longer invited to my wedding because she insisted I asked my stepdad to walk me down the aisle instead of my uncle? Update 1. Hello, so I have a lot to share in this update. First, I'm going to start by thanking everybody who commented on my original post and let me know that even though the way my mother was behaving was unacceptable, I myself also constantly said that I'm extremely stressed about work and the wedding, and that was not normal either. So, for the past week and a half, my fiancé and I have been doing a lot of introspecting, and we think that we need to scale our wedding way down. Of course, I'm not talking about anything that we have already paid for, but mostly about the guest list. The number of people that we were planning on inviting had almost reached 200, and both of us were really stressed about it because there were a lot of people that we'd have to accommodate and think about their lifestyle choices beforehand, and it would also be very expensive. So, after a lot of discussion, we decided to cut down our guest list to only the people that we absolutely wanted at our wedding so we could enjoy the day and have more time to spend with our loved ones. There was really no need for us to have more than 100 people at our wedding. It just didn't even make sense because a lot of these people hadn't even spoken to us in many years, and neither had we had any contact with them apart from a couple of messages exchanged on social media. That doesn't really warrant an invitation to the wedding, and I think we kind of went overboard with the guest list while we were planning it out, but no worries, we have gotten that under control now. Later this week, we will finally be sending out the invitations, and now that only the people that I really want at the wedding are going to be invited, I'm feeling a lot less distressed and better about things in general. As for work, I decided to take some time off because I had bitten off more than I could chew, and I talked to my employers about it, and they were quite happy that I had chosen to offload some of my work. They thought that I was doing a lot all at once, and I really didn't need to put myself through so much because they also had other competent employees, and I didn't need to take it all on my own. So, I'm doing a lot better now, and I plan on having a stress-free wedding. I'm really glad that I chose to talk about it on this thread because both my fiancé and I are quite type A, so we can get really uptight without even realizing it, but this thread and the people who commented on my post made me rethink everything, and I'm doing better now. And as for a few guests who will definitely not make the cut to the final guest list, it's going to have to be my mother and my stepdad. My mother, well, because you guys have already read the original post, and a big reason why I even came to the conclusion that I needed to cut some people out of the list that I was planning was because of the way she was behaving and how she was imposing her unrealistic expectations on me, and my stepdad by extension because I just don't feel like having him at the wedding, and without my mother being there, I don't think he has any reason to be there either. We haven't spoken to each other since I made her cry the other day, and it's been nice. I was getting really sick of her, to be honest. I also spoke to my uncle about her behavior, and he said that he wouldn't have had a problem with me replacing him with my stepdad if my mother insisted upon it. He would have felt really bad, but he wouldn't have made an issue out of it if my stepdad really wanted. I explained to him that it was not about what he wanted. It was my wedding, so it was about what I wanted, as it should be, and I wanted my uncle to walk me down the aisle. So, my mother should have respected that instead of making it such a big deal and blowing it all out of proportion. So much so that now we are not even speaking to each other with just a couple of weeks to go before my wedding. There are 8 weeks to go, to be precise, and I do feel bad that things had to go wrong like this, but it's not like I can help it. So, I'm just coming to terms with all of this and making my peace with it. For the record, I have not blocked my mother anywhere. I mean, I had, but then I unblocked her that very night itself. So, if she wanted to apologize to me, then she could have reached out to me and apologized to me. My anger has also calmed down considerably. She has had enough time to think things over and reconsider her stance on this entire situation. But nothing like that has happened, and I'm beginning to give up hope that maybe we will be able to reconcile before the wedding. I don't know what to say, but I really did want her to be there for me on my wedding day because in spite of everything, she still is my mother, and so far we have always had a good relationship. I don't know why she's screwing it up at this point, but I'm really disappointed in how things have turned out. All I can do is keep my fingers crossed that we will be able to make things up to each other in the next few weeks before the wedding, and hopefully it will all work out. Even if it doesn't, I'm still getting married to the love of my life, so I know that it'll be fine. Update 2. I finally sent out the invitations a few days ago, and just as I had said, my mother and my stepdad did not receive one, and they were furious. I guess they had been asking around whether the other people in our family received their invitations to the wedding or not, and when they found out that most of the people that I wanted at my wedding had received it, they lost it. I can at least understand and excuse that my stepdad was shocked that he had not been invited because even though we were not that close, he was still family, and moreover, he was not aware of anything that my mother had done. But I can't understand my mother's reaction. I don't understand why she was so taken aback because for the last 2 weeks, almost, we haven't even spoken to each other. The last time I saw her, we had not ended that meeting on a good note, and I had also informed her well in advance that I wouldn't be inviting her to the wedding because of the way that she was acting. So, I don't understand why she felt the need to turn up at my place in the morning with my stepdad and try to get answers out of me. This time as well, she showed up right around the time that I was about to leave for work, probably on purpose because she wanted to piss me off even more. Thankfully, I had a day off today, so I had all the time in the world to deal with this nonsense. Also, my fiancé was here, unlike the last time that this same thing happened. So, when they turned up, we invited them in, and even though they had started yelling at us already, we decided to deal with this in a dignified and civil manner because I didn't want to start screaming at them as well and turn this into a shouting match. It just wouldn't make sense. And so, I let them get it all out of their system before I started speaking. Once my mother and stepdad were done expressing their disappointment, rather loudly, I must say, I first addressed my stepdad, and I told him that there were several reasons for which the two of them had not been invited to the wedding that I was sure he didn't know because my mother wanted to look like the good guy here, and that's why she had made it seem like it was all my fault without saying what she had done. One look at his face told me that my mother had indeed not said anything about what she had done to create the situation. So, I informed him about how she had been so insistent that I should replace my uncle with him to walk me down the aisle, and then I had explained to him exactly why I did not want to do that. He had never put in much of an effort to build a strong relationship with me, and even if he had, it wouldn't have mattered because my uncle has been there for me since I was a child. So, that's really different, and I hope that my mother would understand that at some point, but she never did and didn't respect what I had said. So, I had already told her I did not want her at my wedding, and it was about time that he knew about it as well. From that on, he was quiet because he did not know about this side of things. Then I turned to my mother and started speaking to her and told her that she had already known about my decision earlier, so there was really no need for her to create such a fuss about it right now. She hadn't bothered to fix the situation by apologizing to me, even though I had not blocked her specifically because I was expecting her to reach out to me at least just so she could tell me that she could understand where I was coming from and that she wouldn't pressure me to do anything that I didn't want to do anymore. However, that message never came, and now she will not be attending my wedding either. I thought I was being fair enough, but even then, she kept screaming at me and kept saying that I was an ungrateful child and that she deserved better to make me feel guilty. But I just felt irritated after one point. I guess it was obvious that my fiancé and I were not interested in speaking to her, so my stepdad grabbed my mother by the arm and told her that we were not even worth their time. Then they left, and after they were gone, I finally blocked both of them. To be honest, I'm just relieved that this is over now. I hope that they leave me alone after this. Update 3. I got married 2 days ago, and it went just like I had expected, like I had been planning for months, and I think it was a great idea for us to cut short the wedding guest list because we were actually able to speak to everyone who was present and give them time. It wasn't too overcrowded, and everything was really pleasant and dreamy. I ended up missing my mother a little in spite of myself, but my uncle and my fiancé were right there to comfort me and tell me that they would be there for me always. So, that made me feel a bit better about the situation, and eventually I forgot about it by the time I got onto the dance floor. In short, we had a fantastic time, and I don't really regret anything. Now my husband and I are going to be leaving for our honeymoon in a couple of days, and it's going to be absolutely perfect. I know it. Now on to the next story. Story 2. Before we start, if you're enjoying this video so far, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Now let's continue. I gave up my college savings to pay for my brother's cancer treatment, but my family told me to leave the house in 2 days so that his GF could move in to support him. I, 18F, have been helping out my sick brother, 26M, financially for the past 2 years. He had been diagnosed with osteosarcoma 2.5 years back, and that made it very difficult for him to find the kind of work that he had been used to so far. He never went to college because our father passed away around the same time, and we had never really had a lot of money to begin with. His passing just made it worse for us because my mother had never worked a day in her life. She got married really young and had always been a stay-at-home mom. My brother was just around 18 at the time, and I was just 10 years old, so he had to step it up and start taking care of the family, which is why he had to skip college and start looking for jobs immediately. My mother also did the same, and thankfully, we had a few neighbors to help us out in our initial stages while we were still trying to come to terms with my father's passing. He passed away in a car accident, so it was all very sudden, and we did not have any time to prepare ourselves. Luckily, I was old enough to look out for myself by then, so at least they did not have to spend money on childcare for me. Even then, there were a lot of expenses, and I remember my mom and my brother being extremely stressed out throughout my childhood. Things were rough even when my dad was around since my parents had eloped, and they did not have anybody looking out for them and had to build a life for themselves from scratch. But at least when my dad was around, everyone was dealing with things happily because he was just the life of the party. He was that guy who could lighten up a room by walking into it. After his death, the reality of the situation started to sink in, and I don't think any of us have been properly happy ever since. Anyway, after my brother's diagnosis, it became very obvious that he couldn't continue the kind of work that he was doing because he had been a warehouse worker ever since he started working. Most of his jobs in the past had involved a lot of physical labor, and we did not want him to risk that after his diagnosis. He had been pushing it anyway even before, but eventually he had to give up. My mother still continued to work, but a receptionist's income was not enough for the family, so I decided to start contributing to the family's expenses as well. I have been working part-time since I was 14, but instead of saving up that money for college and an apartment, I started contributing to my brother's medical expenses as well because, without a job, he did not have health care anymore, and we had to pay for everything out of our own pockets. It was extremely expensive, but it had to be done. Once in a while, we even had to dip into my mom and brother's savings several times. I had suggested that we should appeal to some nonprofit organizations or the hospital itself because I'm pretty sure that there are programs for people like us, but my mom and my brother had always been too proud. They believe that as long as they can afford it, they would like to hold their heads up high and would not accept charity. They did not even allow me to start a GoFundMe campaign for my brother, even though it would be anonymous. And that's how I ended up sacrificing all my savings that I had been putting together since the age of 14, just for my family. In spite of all of that, they had the audacity to kick me out a couple of months ago just because my brother decided that he wanted his girlfriend to move in with him for support. His girlfriend, Maria, 22F, has been with him for the past 2 years. She started dating him a little before his diagnosis, and I expected them to break up by the time he told her about his sickness. But to my surprise, she decided to stick with him. Initially, we didn't know much about her. She was very shy, and every time that she would visit, she would only talk to my brother and then leave. We had insisted that she have dinner at our place, but she always refused, saying that she had to go back to her aunt. It was later on that we found out that she was an orphan. Her parents had left her with her aunt before going on vacation, and unfortunately, they never came back. It is still not known whether they got into an accident or not, but it's unlikely that they have been well and alive for so many years and haven't bothered to contact her. Even if they are alive, they are as good as dead to her because she has spent her entire life without them. She comes from a similar financial background, and she met my brother when she started working at the coffee shop opposite my brother's workplace. I really liked her in the beginning. She seemed quiet but sweet, and after she began to open up to us, I thought that she and my brother could really make it since she was willing to stand by him even in such dire circumstances. But eventually, I started to see her differently when I found out that my brother would help her out financially as well. He would occasionally tell us that he had given a certain amount of money to her for her expenses because apparently her aunt did not treat her well at all, and she really needed the money so she could put together a reasonable amount and move out eventually. After she had turned 18, her aunt did not allow her to live with her for free and forced her to get a job so she could pay rent and contribute to all the other expenses as well, and she was struggling to keep up with that as well as putting aside money for her future. So my brother had decided to help her out a bit. I thought it was stupid because we were barely managing to scrape by ourselves, and here he was trying to help out his girlfriend. My mother, however, did not find anything wrong with it and kept trying to convince me that it was fine because he was doing it for love, and if she was ready to sacrifice everything just to be with him, then this is the least that my brother could do for her. The thing is, I wasn't sure exactly how much she was having to sacrifice because as far as I knew, having cancer doesn't really mean that my brother shouldn't have a life of his own, like everyone else does. So for my mother to make it seem like Maria was doing him a favor by being with him was kind of weird for me, but I didn't say anything about it. At the end of the day, we were all family, and I knew that no matter what, we were going to stick together and make everything work. That's how my father had intended for things to be, and I know that that's how it was going to work. I had done the math before I graduated and figured out by the end of last year that there was no way I would be able to go to college or get an apartment of my own because I did not have enough money saved up for myself since I was contributing to the family as well. But I was okay with that. I didn't even tell anyone about it because I didn't want my mom or my brother to feel bad, and I silently continued to work full-time so that I would be able to support my family. But around 2 months ago, my mom suddenly approached me and told me that she wanted me to find a place of my own and move out. That took me by surprise because I had just turned 18, and I had honestly just believed that like my brother had started working and continued to live in our home, I would be doing the same. When I asked my mother why she was asking me to move out, she told me that my brother had asked Maria to move in with him because she had gotten into a really nasty fight with her aunt, and apparently she just couldn't go back to her anymore. She needed a place to crash, and our house was too small for all of us to stay together. My mom knew that I had some money set aside, so she wanted me to move out, and she believed that it would also be good for my brother to have Maria around for emotional support. I just couldn't believe that she was going to treat me like that after I had sacrificed everything just to be there for my family, and initially, I refused to leave. But then she said that I was being selfish because we were not even sure how much more time my brother had. It was all just ridiculous, and after the discussion with my mother, I even spoke to my brother about it, hoping that this would not have been his idea. But unfortunately, it was. He said that he was really thankful for everything that I had done for him, but he just wanted this one last favor from me as well, because if he was going to pass away sooner than everyone else, then he would rather have Maria around him. At the very least, his condition hadn't improved in a really long time, but it hadn't deteriorated as well, so it was not like he was constantly at risk of dropping dead. And hypothetically, even if he was, I found it strange that he would rather have Maria around, his girlfriend who had been there with him for just 2 years, than his own family, especially me. Unlike Maria, I was actually the one who had made real sacrifices, like my future and my education. But after he told me that he really loved her and wanted her to be with him, and he was even ready to ask me to move out for that, I realized that I had sacrificed everything in vain, and it was completely not worth it. Out of sheer spite, I decided to move out and cut ties with them, because clearly, this was not the kind of family that my dad had envisioned. Had my father been around, he never would have allowed this to happen, but unfortunately, he was not here anymore, and I had to look out for myself rather than staying in a place where I was clearly unwanted. I decided to move out and stay with a couple of friends for the first few weeks until I found a place of my own. I was finally able to find a dingy little apartment in a really bad neighborhood that I would be sharing with 2 roommates, but at least the rent was affordable. At that point, I was honestly just thankful to have even found the kind of a place, and I felt lucky to even have a roof over my head, because I did not want to be a burden on my friends and their parents, since most of them were not exactly well-versed about my situation. I was also pretty lucky to have kind roommates who became friends with me pretty quickly. Both of them also have their own share of struggles, and all I can say is that none of us come from a financially stable background, which is probably why they were able to resonate with me and they were so kind to me. For the past 2 months after I left, I have had absolutely no contact with my family, and I really miss them, because before everything went wrong, I was really close with them. I couldn't even imagine a day when I wouldn't speak to them, but here I was, living without them. They did not bother to reach out to me after I left, which is even more hurtful, especially after everything that I had given up for the sake of my brother. At least he should have reached out to me. I had never even blocked them, because I had kept expecting them to reach out to me at some point, but unfortunately, they did not do so until recently. And even then, it was to demand my help, not to apologize. My mom called me up a couple of days back, and she was really upset. I thought that she was going to apologize, so that's why I picked up that call. But then she told me that apparently she was calling me to tell me that Maria had pulled off a disappearing act and had broken up with my brother over text the previous night. Apparently, she had sent him a text saying that she had really tried very hard to make this work, but she couldn't wrap her head around the fact that eventually he was going to pass away, and she would be left all alone. Before she had to deal with that, she wanted to cut him out of her life so that it would hurt less when he finally left her. She had told him not to contact her again and said that she was going really far away. For the past 2 months, she had been living with my family without paying any rent or even contributing to any other expenses. She had been living for completely free, and so she had been able to put together enough money to leave. So she had thanked all of us for allowing her to live with him, but now she had to think about herself as well. In simple words, she had played my brother for a fool and used him. I didn't even think it was possible for a human being to use somebody as poor as us, especially one who was suffering from cancer, but Maria had done the unthinkable. You have to hand it to her, she played it pretty smartly. She knew she was not pretty or well off enough to even make it into a relationship with somebody richer than my brother. So she played it safe but clever and had my brother wrapped around her finger. And then she just tossed him aside when she realized that she didn't need him anymore, just like my family had done to me, if we really think about it. So when my mother told me that she needed my help to fix this, saying that my brother was miserable and couldn't stop crying, and I needed to help her track down where Maria was and at least get her to talk to my brother so he would get some sense of closure, I simply laughed at her and said that this was karma for what they had done to me, and I hoped that he never got any sort of closure, because after how they treated me, they simply did not deserve it. And then I hung up without another word and blocked them. After that, I spoke to my roommates about it, and both of them were a bit skeptical regarding my reaction to the situation. Of course, they haven't said that I have done anything wrong, and they think that my reaction was completely valid, and so are my feelings about this. They said that if they were in my place, they probably would have done something similar. But then they said something that really got me thinking. They asked me if this is how I really wanted to end my relationship with my mom and my brother, because at the end of the day, no matter what they have done, he is still not going to make it for long. They said that if my brother was not a cancer patient, they might have reacted differently, but given the circumstances, they want me to think about what I want to do because they don't think that I should regret anything in the future. That's all that they said. They did not push me to apologize to them or reach out to them again, but it was enough for me to start thinking about whether what I had done was right or not. Just to be clear, I do not want anybody hating my roommates because they have really been there for me, and all they are trying to do is give me a different perspective on the situation. They have not been pushing me to do anything. They are respectful of my feelings, and I really want everyone in the comments to be respectful of them as well, even if they don't agree with what they believe. Anyway, I have thought about it for a couple of days, and I haven't been able to come to a conclusion, so I'm here to ask, am I the a-hole for telling my mom and my brother that it's karma that his girlfriend dumped him and left after freeloading for 2 months? Edit. My parents eloped because both my grandparents were not in agreement with their relationship. I don't know the details of it, to be honest, since neither of my parents ever bothered to tell us about it. They have always been very secretive and private about their past, which is why I've never been able to figure out why exactly we had to run away. All I know is that our families did not approve of the relationship that my parents had, and by extension, they probably wouldn't approve of us either. That's why we haven't ever had any contact with anybody from our families. Even if I had wanted to reach out to them, I wouldn't have been able to do it because I didn't even know their names, so approaching them for any sort of help had always been out of the question. As for why Maria never moved out to live with any of her other relatives, I don't really know why. I never bothered to ask because I had always been very busy with work, and I only knew her as my brother's girlfriend. We were not close personally, so I didn't want to come off as prying and ask such personal questions. And anyway, I hope that clears up any doubts that people might have had. Update 1. Hi. So I thought about it, and I decided to have a discussion with my roommates about what they had said. I think it was better to just get everything out of the way since even if they hadn't pushed me to do anything, they did have their own opinions, and I felt like I had to share why I had done what I had done. So I explained my entire situation to them once again, even though they already knew everything. After hearing me out once again, they told me they were really not going to judge me. It was then that I found out that one of my roommates had also left her family behind before she moved here, and it had been kind of a similar situation for her in the sense that she and her dad had had a huge fight before she moved away because he wanted her to stay back with them and learn the ropes of the family business. But she wanted to move out and pursue a degree in literature, which is why she had moved here against all the odds and without any support from her family. So she hadn't been in touch with her family for almost 6 months. And then one day her mother finally called her up to inform her that her dad had passed away from a heart attack in the middle of the night. And her only regret so far was the fact that she hadn't tried to make it right with him even once. She did attend his funeral, but everyone in her family seemed to be very judgmental, so she never bothered to contact anyone after that. She does occasionally speak to her mother, but they are not very close anymore. Of course, I am free to do what she did, and that's why the two of them had shared their opinion on the situation. Ultimately, I thanked them for looking out for me, and they thanked me for respecting their opinion without making a big deal out of it. There was never really a fight to begin with, but even then, we were able to clear the air, and it's all good. They can understand where I'm coming from, and I can totally understand why they said what they did. I know that they are not judging me, and I'm going to stick to my decision of not speaking to my mom or my brother until they apologize. And just because I have blocked them, it doesn't mean that they don't have any means to apologize to me. I have only blocked their phone numbers. They can still contact me on social media, and unless they reach out to me to genuinely apologize, I'm not speaking a word to them. And it's not like they haven't exactly tried to reach out to me, but it's not the way that I would expect them to. I don't know why they felt the need to involve other people in this, but instead of just talking to me themselves, they decided to get our neighbor involved. Our next-door neighbor, Jennifer, has been one of my mom's oldest friends. She is a single woman in her late 40s. She never married and doesn't have any family of her own, and she always used to look out for us when we were kids. So I have a lot of respect for her in my heart, and I have always liked her. But I think this time she shouldn't have interfered because she doesn't know what I have been through. She texted me yesterday and told me that my mother and my brother were very upset about how I was treating them, And as somebody who has watched me grow up, she never expected me to act like this. She said that apparently she had hoped that I would understand that my brother was really in love with Maria and he wanted her back, even if it was for just one last goodbye. But instead of trying to be there for him and support him during such a bleak time of his life, I was turning my back on my family, and she even said that my father would have been really disappointed in my behavior. First things first, I'm not sure what I can do about Maria leaving him because it's not like we are friends. I can't convince her to come back, so I already have nothing I can do to help them out. And secondly, it's very convenient that they are all skipping out on what they did to me. If my father had known about that, I'm pretty sure he wouldn't have been pleased about that because I had sacrificed everything for my family, and what did they do? They sacrificed their relationship with me for Maria, somebody they barely even knew. So thank you, but no thank you, Jennifer. I don't owe my family anything, not anymore at least. Update 2. Hello, it has been almost 2 weeks since Jennifer contacted me. I did not think that my mom or my brother would bother to speak to me again. I thought wrong. I guess this morning they visited me, and of course, I cut off the friend who gave them my address. I know for a fact that after that phone call, my mother told me Maria had left and they would definitely try to find out where I was living. So I had given all my friends very strict and specific instructions that if my family tried to contact them and get them to give them my address, they were just supposed to ignore it and block them if need be. But at no cost were they supposed to tell them where I was living because if they found out, they would definitely keep bothering me again and again. And I did not have the time, money, or energy to relocate. And yet an idiot friend of mine decided to ignore my instructions and give them my address because he thought he was doing me a favor by trying to reunite me with my family. I mean, who cares what I really want anyway? And enough about him. After my family found out that I was living, they decided to visit me because I had blocked them everywhere else. And apparently they did not think that speaking to me on social media was appropriate for a discussion like this. It was just ridiculous, and I refused to even open the door to them, but they told me that they would stand outside all day if they needed to, but they would not leave without speaking to me. My roommates were also both at home, so I asked them if they would be fine with me inviting my family in, and then they said that they wouldn't mind. So I finally decided to invite them inside. It was not out of warmth or forgiveness. I just invited them inside so we could talk about whatever they wanted to talk to me about and then put an end to this once and for all. I did not want them to keep disturbing me since I was trying really hard to move on from the past, and this was not helping. I thought that at least now they would apologize, but even now, they did not think that it was necessary and continued to speak about how horrible they were feeling about everything, and since I was family, they needed me to be there for them. They did not apologize but said that they really missed me and wanted me to come back home. Besides, they apparently did not think it was safe for me to live in such a terrible neighborhood. I found it laughable because for the past months, they had not even bothered to find out where I was, and now they were worried about my safety all of a sudden. I made it very clear to them that I had invited them only because I wanted to tell them that I did not want them around me or trying to contact me anymore. They had several chances to apologize to me and at least try to make amends with me, but it seemed like they did not care about anything apart from themselves and their own feelings. They were incredibly selfish people, and I wanted nothing to do with them anymore because I had to think of my future as well, just like Maria had said. So while I really appreciated their concern, at this point, I did not need them to come take me back with them. They started getting offended at that point and said that they did not think that they had anything to apologize for because my brother had only tried to help out and he had no idea that it would backfire like this. I had started losing my temper by then because I couldn't believe that they were still trying to justify what they had done because in my opinion, there was just no way to make it make sense. So I was very rude to them, and eventually they stopped fighting with me and trying to argue with me and said that if I really didn't want them to talk to me anymore, then they would gladly cut ties with me, and they said that they had come here to make me feel sense, but obviously that was not going to be possible. I agree that's not going to be possible because people like them could never understand me, and someone like me is never going to understand where they are coming from. So then they finally left, and when my roommates finally came back out, they actually apologized to me because they had no idea that my family was like this. Anyway, now that's all done, and I only have to think about my future now. My family did not care about me when I needed them, and now I'm going to treat them the same way. Update 3. Hello. It has been close to a year since I left home, and I've been doing pretty well for myself. I had been working as a floor worker at the local grocery store for the past couple of months, but recently I got hired as a salesperson in a furniture company, and it's a pretty big deal because I'm going to be making more money now. I'm still living with my roommates, but we are planning on moving into a bigger apartment together pretty soon, since we have all been putting aside money. I have not had any contact with my family since the last time that we met. I know that my brother is doing all right, since I'm pretty sure that Jennifer would let me know if something had happened to him. I hope that all of them are well, and maybe someday in the future they will come to their senses and try to reconcile with me, and I might be open to it, but for now I'm very happy with my life. Now on to the next story. Story 3. I've cut my alcoholic dad out of my life after he faked illness to skip my wedding while promising to come. But then my brother blamed me and said I should feel sorry for my dad. I, 35F, have rewritten this so many times. It's just hard to get all of my feelings out. I apologize for this being long. I was very low contact with my father for many years. He and my mother had a bitter divorce when I was 18, and he found his current girlfriend, Debbie, when I was 20. Without going too in-depth, he was physically and mentally abusive my whole life until I moved out when I was 20. When the pandemic hit, he started calling more. With the state of the world and me being now in my 30s, I was more open to communicating with him. We very slowly would communicate, with me setting very firm boundaries with conversation topics. He would occasionally violate them and scream at me. He'd go in timeout and then he'd be good for a while. When I met my husband, Victor, my father was actually excited for me. He spent time trying to get to know him over the phone and was happy for me when I moved in with Victor. My father actually apologized to me for everything he'd done for the first time in my life. I felt heard and validated by my father. He apologized for treating me like trash in favor of my siblings. He apologized for all the horrible things he did to me, and I cried. I felt validation and relief like I never had before, and I was then completely open to a relationship with him again. When I got engaged, he was thrilled. He asked if he was walking me down the aisle, and I had told him no. It didn't really feel right to me, and I wasn't having bridesmaids or groomsmen, so it made sense to walk by myself. No one in my family was ever there for me, so why wouldn't I walk towards my next chapter alone, like I did my adult life? He was disappointed but was okay with it. I told him we could have a dance if that was good with him, and he agreed. I told him everyone on my mom's side was excited to be able to see him again after so many years. He and my mother have been cordial for years at this point, so there was no animosity. He set up a dinner and had me and Victor over. It went very well. I was actually feeling positive about everything. We made plans for him to meet Victor's parents. It was a big deal because we had to travel to a different state to bring them. We made plans to make the trip and coordinated everything. The week before the meeting, my father wanted to cancel. He said Debbie was having an exploratory surgery and she wouldn't be recovered in time. I said we had already made these plans, but that's okay, and asked if we could just drive by and he could just step outside his home and say hi. Victor's father, who is in his 70s, was having an extensive surgery himself, so it was important to meet him now before he had it. He begrudgingly agreed. When we pulled up, I was surprised she came out with him and looked completely fine. No bandages, walked fine, no indication of anything. I thought that was odd, but who am I to judge? They both came out, said hi, and we moved on. He made plans over the course of the next few months. Every time the week of, he would cancel. The excuses started pouring out. His friend's car broke down and he needed to lend him money. We offered to pay for dinner, but they declined. Debbie was having exploratory surgery again. How many can one person have? Debbie had a doctor's appointment that he just found out about. They have to take the car to the shop, etc. Lies he had told over and over again. Some he reused from when I was growing up with him, and I knew he was lying. His favorite lies were always medical. He wanted to treat me for my birthday in the summer, but that never happened after we had to reschedule 3 times. I said, just forget it, we'll see you at the wedding. He started to be drunk on his phone calls again, started being argumentative again, but he was excited for the wedding. He was going to make a nice trip out of it with Debbie and stay a few days. 3 weeks before my wedding, I got a phone call from Debbie. They share a phone. As soon as I picked up, she demanded to know why I didn't tell anyone that the parking garage next to the hotel we had a room block and charged $25 a day to park. I was dumbstruck because, firstly, I had no idea that the hotel didn't comp. We live local to the venue, so we were just going home after the wedding. Second, it's a major city, of course they're going to charge, and honestly $25 isn't that bad for the city. Thirdly, why are you calling me to complain about this? No one else had. I can't exactly change it. I told her I had no idea, that no one else who booked at the hotels had told me, and that $25 was actually a pretty good deal. I told her that if they couldn't afford it, it wasn't that big a deal, maybe they only stay one day, or because they only live an hour from the venue, they didn't have to stay at the hotel. The venue itself has free parking. She hung up on me. We were getting married on Sunday in early November. The Tuesday before the wedding, I got a phone call from my father that I missed because I was having an emergency doctor's appointment due to having been in the hospital the day before. Stress from everything exacerbated a prior medical issue. Instead, I received a text. The text said he wasn't coming to my wedding, that Debbie was having exploratory surgery and they couldn't come, that he would still send a card. I knew then that he was lying, as he had lied the whole year. I texted back begging him to come. I wrote that I wanted him to come, that it wasn't about money, that I'm his daughter and this was the biggest day of my life. I asked him to come for even an hour, that Debbie would be fine for a short time, that she is family, and that someone could watch her for a couple hours, he didn't have to stay. He replied that it's not a contest of who's more important and he was surprised at me. I gave my wonderful Victor my phone while I was sobbing. I couldn't respond. I was hurting and devastated. He articulated a text, showed it to me for approval, then sent it. It said, basically very politely but firmly, that if he couldn't spare a couple hours of his time to see me on the biggest day of my life, then we would go back to no contact and I would never again speak to him. My mother, who's her own story for another day, even called him to scream at him for what he was doing. She knew his lies too and called him out on them. He said, "Don't worry, she'll still get a card." I kept him unblocked up until mid-morning the day of my wedding. Not one message, not one call. I was so upset and angry. He had raised my hopes of having my father be there for me, then killed those hopes without a thought. I blocked him the day of my wedding. My wedding day was absolutely perfect. It was everything we wanted. I felt a little sad right before walking down the aisle, and some friends who didn't know about my father asked me where he was. But other than that, I didn't even think of him. It wasn't until after Thanksgiving that I thought to check my blocked messages. He hadn't sent me one message the day of my wedding wishing me luck. Nothing. But he did send one message on Thanksgiving. To summarize, it said, "Debbie will always come first, you should understand that." I don't understand it. I told my brother, who still talks to him, that he is dead to me and if he asks, to tell him that. My brother thinks that Debbie is the one preventing my father from being with his family. I quite frankly don't care. He made that decision and these are the consequences. He asked my brother how much of a wave he made not coming, and my brother told him a big wave, but he wasn't talking about it. So I made the decision. My father will no longer be in my life. And I have so many emotions about it, but it's mostly relief, sadness, and anger. But I can't help but occasionally check my blocked messages now because some part of me just wants to know if he knows how badly he hurt me, or if he even cares. And some days I just want my dad. Sometimes I wonder if I'm doing the right thing by cutting him out of my life, for erasing him completely forever going forward. Am I doing the right thing? And no, we still haven't gotten that card. Got a happy Easter text though. Comments where OP has replied. Comment 1, he may never have planned to come. P, I think you're right. I hate to think this was his plan all along, and some part of me still hopes that at some point maybe he was actually planning on coming. But ultimately, I think this was his plan to drop out right before my big day. I'll never know. Thank you for your kind words. Reading the support from such nice internet strangers is helping me heal and be at peace with my decision. Comment 2. Does he have substance abuse issues? P, yes. Growing up, both he and my mother were alcoholics. The kicker. Back when he first dated Debbie, and before I left, my father had custody of us after the divorce. I was old enough to leave, but I couldn't leave my brother alone. Another story for another day. I had found some white powder on the garage table. I had no idea what it was and cleaned it off. My dumbass thought it was salt. Later, when Debbie and my father argued, She came into my room and apologized for getting him back into drugs and confessed to me she started him on cocaine and pills after his first heart attack. They apparently stopped the drugs and only use alcohol. Comment 3 NTA, but one thing to be aware of: if, when you find that you're expecting a child, he will come back promising he is a changed man, promising a new start, promising it will be different this time. At that time, ask yourself why you should ever let your child suffer the pain, confusion, manipulation, and rejection that you did, and kick him back to the curb. OP. That's Victor's fear, that I'll bend when a child comes around. He had a long talk with me about that, and he reminded me of my childhood and how he knows I would never want to expose a future child to that. He's absolutely right. It does make me sad that my future kids will never meet my father, but ultimately, it's the best decision. My niece met my father once at her baptism and then never again. She asks my sister questions and my sister doesn't really know what to say, just that he was not a very nice person. Update 1. I got a request for an update, and now I have some time now that things have settled, though there hasn't really been an update, more of a development. First, I want to thank you for all your comments and advice. The fact that any of you took the time to write me a comment meant the world to me. You all truly encouraged me and strengthened my resolve. Right after my post, I had a good talk with Victor and he echoed everything you all said. I even looked into deleting my father's number permanently from my phone, but apparently that would unblock him. After a lot of reading through the comments and reflecting on what everyone said, I really started to think why I ever thought I was the A for cutting him off. Well, I guess I have my answer. My brother, Devin, 30, is really impressionable. He lives with my mother, and while living with my mother can be a nightmare, they were doing well. My brother means a lot to me. I gave up school, a career, and took on 3 jobs to be able to help raise him for a few years with my dad after my parents' divorce. He has always struggled to truly be independent, mostly due to my father's coddling most of his life. He was the golden child, the only boy. In an attempt to help him succeed, some family members, mom's side, decided to step up and get him out of my mother's house and support him to a move to a warmer state to rent with some cousins. They even paid for him to fly out to the new state and see if he wanted to move. When he got home, he apparently went straight to my father's and spent 4 days there. I have no idea why. I called up my brother a few days after he returned back to my mother's. He said he was really looking forward to moving to the new state. After talking to him a bit, I mentioned that I was happy for him but really sad I'd be losing one of my close family members I talked to. His response: well, I'm the only family member who still talks to Dad, so imagine how he feels. I was stunned. I said, I'm sorry, what did you say? He got angry and just said, well, when I move, Dad will really have no one because you refuse to talk to him even though it's been months. You really should feel bad for him. He doesn't understand how you can still be mad at him. All those feelings came flooding back. The doubt, the guilt, the am I doing the right thing? And then the anger came in. In that moment, I realized that this is what my family normally does to me and what my father normally does. He plays the victim, makes everyone feel bad for him, even though I am in the right. I am made to feel like a POS for having boundaries. I took a breath and explained to my brother, Devin, Dad made his choice. He chose this. I was open to him being a dad, he declined that. He didn't want to be in my life. He has no right to complain. He did this to himself. I don't care if Debbie made him not go or not. He's a grown-ass man and he didn't go to his own daughter's wedding, so he can stay dead to me. It was his choice. My brother didn't have anything to say to that. He just rushed me off the phone with barely a goodbye. Hung up after I barely got the words, love you, out. I told Victor what Devin said and he was appalled. He wished I had taken the call near him so he could speak to my brother himself. I told him that my father brainwashed him, that he's not normally like this. He reminded me that Devin is a grown man and not a child anymore and that I shouldn't excuse what he said. I became so upset, my resolve shaken once again. I felt awkward about the phone call, so I followed up the next day. He wanted to move the beginning of June. I asked him to visit before he goes from a car ride away distance to a plane ride, and he said he would see me midday for his yearly visit to me, like always. Then a week before our normal visit date, I found out from my mother. My brother texted her and told her he plans to move in 4 days and make the multi-day long drive to the new state. So he lied to me and didn't even plan on seeing me to say goodbye. Victor had no words, just that he's incredibly disappointed in my brother. My brother called me the day before he left. He sounded so happy saying, "Hey, what's up?" I told him, "Well, honestly, I'm a little hurt and disappointed in you right now because I'm assuming you're calling to tell me you're leaving tomorrow and you're not even bothering to say goodbye to me." He then was adamant that he told me. Then when I pointed out that he didn't, he erupted in anger at me saying I always play the victim and why wasn't I happy for him leaving and how dare I make him feel guilty. Almost word for word what my father would say. I told him I'm thrilled he's moving and having a new opportunity. I'm upset he's telling me 12 hours before he's leaving and not saying goodbye when he literally has to pass within 20 minutes of where I live when he leaves. After I started crying, my brother apologized for not telling me. I offered to be up at whatever time he needed. I just wanted to hug him goodbye. He declined, said he'd be back eventually. Victor was listening and was getting angry at my brother and how he was speaking to me. He's so agitated with him and is hoping he starts acting like an adult in the new state. It's been months now since he moved. I've heard nothing from my father. My brother and I talked occasionally on the phone with me checking in, and especially that first month, he is struggling where he is to get a full-time job, but he is doing everything he can to at least pay rent. He became busy in the last month, so I hadn't heard from him in a while. My birthday came. He sent me a happy birthday text and said he'd call later. At 11:45 p.m., I finally got a call from him. I was in the middle of a video game match with friends. After a brief chat, I asked if he was free the next night. He said yes, so I told him I would call him the next day for a proper catch-up because he caught me in the middle of something. He hung up on me and didn't answer my call the next day. I haven't tried to call since. I did check for this post and I did not receive any messages from my father. Not since his happy Easter. Ever since him and my mother separated, he has always forgotten my birthday anyway. I'm at a loss. I don't know what I did wrong or what I did to deserve this treatment from him. Is this all because I won't forgive my father? And I just sitting here just sad? All I've ever wanted is my family to love me and I don't know what to do next. If you have advice for me, I just ask you say it kindly. My heart is rather full of emotions at the moment. Update 2, February 19th, 2025. I have gotten a couple requests for a further update, and I do have some new developments so I can at least share something with you all. It's not a full pot of tea, but you can sip it from a dusty teacup made up of my unresolved issues. Also, thank you all for your kind words. I appreciate all of you taking the time to comment and make me feel validated. Okay, now for the update to the update. My brother. In early October, my brother called me and was saying how he wasn't doing well in the new state and he basically wanted to come back home. In a way, I wonder if he was fishing to live with me and Victor so he didn't have to return to my mother, but I would never live with him ever again. I basically just told him to talk to our mother and work out a plan to come back if that's what he wants to do. I'm through trying to fix things for him. He promised to return for Christmas, which of course didn't happen. I haven't heard from him since. I've gotten the group holiday texts, but I absolutely refuse to reach out. He has broken every promise he gave me and I am finally feeling strong enough to distance myself. Through my mother, I found out he got a better job and was looking to stay there. I guess I wasn't needed anymore, so that's why I haven't gotten a phone call or text. And then just yesterday, I found out he isn't working anymore because his car has finally become a paperweight. A 20-year-old car that he never took care of. My mother used to force him to get oil changes and basic maintenance, and now without my mom there to annoy him into adulting, it finally died. So I feel at this point either my uncle is going to help him with a vehicle or he's going to try and move back. I will bet money he will try to move in with my father if he does return. If that's the case, I do feel they will both join forces to try and manipulate me into forgiving them and using me. My father, he actually has been trying to reach out. I have received multiple texts from him every holiday saying how much he loves me and will love me always and wishes me and Victor well. I also keep getting calls and silent voicemails from random numbers. My sister even met with him for the first time in years because my niece wanted to meet him. He tried again to justify not going to my wedding and my sister told him that there was zero excuse. He should have gone to the ceremony at the very least. He kept trying to defend himself but my sister kept shutting him down, saying he could have made at least a minimum effort. While I'm not close with my sister, I greatly appreciated her saying that for me. Overall, she said he behaved himself and was fine. I actually was doing really good about not checking the messages, but I still once in a while have my curiosity get the better of me. Victor gets mad at me when I check. He wants me to not get sucked in again with either my brother or father. He still plans on having a chat with my brother next time we see him. I do feel myself starting to feel bad. My anger just isn't as sharp anymore, but I'm holding strong, reminding myself that I seem to only be his daughter when it's convenient and that to me isn't a father. But I'm still just a girl who wants her dad, and I am trying so hard to not fall back into his perpetual pit of assholery. Me, not gonna lie, I've been lonely. All of my friends after the wedding have disappeared. I reach out to them asking how they're doing and get one-word answers back, which hurts. I've been trying to make new ones, but it's been hard. I spent most of my days either working at home online for our business or playing video games alone or with Victor. I love my husband, but sometimes I just want a girl day. My self-confidence has plummeted. I don't like what I see in the mirror anymore. We've been trying for a kid with zero luck, so that's taken a hit with my mental health as well. But I am actually going to my first therapy session next month, which I am incredibly excited about. So unfortunately, my saga isn't over. If something major happens, I'll definitely let you waffles know. Now on to the next story. Story 4. My sister bullied me for years but invited me to a dinner party. When I arrived, everyone had already finished eating, and she ordered me to clean up and do the dishes because I was a pathetic waitress. My sister, Helen, has always been the golden child in our family, and my parents have never hidden this fact from anyone. As the youngest, she was deemed my parents' miracle child. My parents had tried for many years to have another child after me despite facing significant health challenges. After my birth, my mother encountered complications that led doctors to advise against further pregnancies, essentially telling my parents to give up hope of expanding their family. However, 5 years later, my mother defied all the odds and became pregnant again. This news was nothing short of a miracle for my father, who was overjoyed at the prospect of welcoming another child. This miracle baby status has profoundly influenced my sister's upbringing and how my parents have treated her. They have always gone out of their way to ensure she had the best of everything, treating her like a queen. Every milestone and every achievement of hers was celebrated with great fanfare, reinforcing her special status within the family. This favoritism was never subtle. It was openly displayed and acknowledged, making it clear to everyone, including myself, that my sister held a unique and exalted position in our parents' hearts. Now, don't get me wrong, my parents provided for me as well, ensuring I had everything I needed. But the way they treated me often felt like an afterthought. Take school events, for instance. If both my sister and I had events on the same day, my parents would invariably choose to attend hers. They'd explain that she was the youngest and needed them more, as if my events and needs were somehow less important. There are countless childhood pictures of my sister, meticulously organized into albums that my parents cherish and hold on to until today. In contrast, they haven't even kept one album of me, claiming that my pictures were lost in a storm. I wish they could have at least saved a few pictures because I would have liked to see the way I grew up as a baby. It's hard not to feel like an afterthought when my childhood existence wasn't preserved the same way as my sister's. Growing up, whenever my sister Helen had a problem, it was immediately addressed and resolved, no matter how trivial. But if I ever complained or needed something, my dad would dismiss me and call me spoiled. If I ever felt anxious to try new things or talk to new people, my mother would tell me how overdramatic I was and would scold me to be more confident like my sister. My parents' attitude towards me always made me feel like my concerns and feelings were secondary compared to my sister's. And then there was the blame game. If my sister ever did something wrong, I was also held responsible for her actions. According to my parents, as the oldest child, I should have taught her to be better. It didn't matter if I had nothing to do with her actions. The responsibility always fell on me simply because of my birth order. This constant, unjustified blame further solidified my role as the less favored child, constantly living in the shadow of my sister's pedestal. Helen didn't help the situation either. She knew exactly how to leverage her favorite child status to her advantage, often using it to get away with things or to one-up me during even the smallest disagreements. She would frequently force me to let her use my belongings or wear my clothes without my permission. If I ever dared to protest, she would run to our parents and complain, painting me as selfish and inconsiderate. Inevitably, I would be scolded for not sharing and made to feel like the bad guy in every situation. However, Helen's behavior was decidedly one-sided. She never allowed me to touch her things, always being very territorial about her possessions. For a long time, we shared a room, and she fiercely guarded her side and her belongings. Even after we moved into separate rooms, the dynamic didn't change. She maintained strict boundaries about her stuff, yet always expected me to be accommodating and generous with mine. This double standard was exhausting and demoralizing. Helen's ability to manipulate situations in her favor, combined with my parents' unwavering support of her, always left me feeling isolated and constantly undervalued. It seemed like no matter what I did, I was always in the wrong, while Helen could do no wrong in their eyes. As a result of my sisters' and my parents' actions, I fell into a deep depression. My self-confidence eroded, and I developed serious self-image issues. As a teenager, the anxiety was overwhelming, especially whenever Helen would pick a fight with me or mock me. The constant fear of confrontation left me on edge, and my parents' aggressive yelling often pushed me to the brink of panic attacks. When they got too close during their tirades, I would feel like I couldn't breathe, as if I were suffocating under the weight of their disappointment and anger. No one in my family seemed to notice or care about my struggles. I felt like a caged animal, trapped in a cycle of emotional and psychological torment, with no one to turn to for support. As a result, my only solace came from writing my thoughts down in a journal every night. I would pour my heart out onto those pages, detailing my fears, frustrations, and sadness. It was the one place where I could be completely honest about what I was going through. It was a way to process the chaos around me and to find a small measure of peace. I always kept the journal hidden under my bed, afraid that Helen might find it and mock me for my vulnerabilities. One day, my worst nightmare came true. Helen, who had a habit of snooping in my room despite my repeated pleas for her to leave my space alone, found my journal while I was out. She must have read through its contents, violating the one sanctuary I had. When I came home that evening, I found my parents and Helen sitting in the living room, their faces unusually solemn. I thought maybe there had been a death in the family. Seeing their serious expressions, and I asked them if everything was okay. My dad asked me to sit down so they could talk to me. My heart started racing as I complied, an ominous feeling settling in my gut. Then my mother pulled my journal from behind her. My eyes widened in shock and disbelief as I demanded to know what she was doing with my journal. Helen just smirked, enjoying my distress, while my mother looked at me with an uncharacteristic seriousness and asked if what I had written truly reflected my innermost thoughts. At that moment, I felt so utterly exposed and betrayed. The journal had been my only safe place, the one spot where I could express my pain and frustration without fear of judgment or ridicule. Now, my most private thoughts were laid bare before the very people who had driven me to write them. The gravity of the situation overwhelmed me, and I could feel a panic attack looming. As I struggled to respond, I quietly replied that yes, it did reflect my thoughts, and that they had no right to go through it. My dad shook his head and told me that if what I had written was true, then they had serious concerns about me. Confused, I looked at them as he continued, saying that after reading my journal, they felt like I was a psychopath who needed help because of the hate they believed I harbored towards them. I was completely taken aback. Nowhere in my entire journal had I ever mentioned anything hateful about my parents or my sister. I had simply documented the experiences and feelings that their actions had caused me over the years. Yet here they were, twisting my honest reflections into something sinister. My parents started blaming me for writing such dark things and even labeled me as a psychopath for maintaining a journal. My mother went on to tell me that she and my dad had never treated me this way and that I was making up things in my head to fill up this journal. She said that I needed serious help before I harmed someone. Helen even chimed in, saying that after reading my journal, she felt embarrassed to call me her sister because my behavior was clearly not normal. I tried to argue back, insisting that I had done nothing wrong and that I hadn't written anything bad about them. I explained that the journal was simply about my life and that they had no right to judge me based on my personal reflections. But my family didn't care about my explanations. They were fixated on their narrative that something was wrong with me. I felt so exposed and vulnerable in front of them at that moment. It was as if they had stripped away the last shred of my privacy and used it against me. My parents told me that they would be taking me to see a psychiatrist the very next day because I needed serious help before things turned south. Their words were laced with a mix of condescension and misplaced concern, making it clear that they saw me as the problem. I felt a crushing sense of betrayal and helplessness. It was as if they were determined to turn the situation around and make me the problem rather than acknowledging the hurt and damage they had inflicted. The betrayal cut deep, and their response further alienated me and reinforced the sense of isolation and helplessness I had long felt. When I started going to a psychiatrist, I initially felt really uncomfortable and guilty, as if I had genuinely done something wrong. I had bought into the idea that I was the issue in my family, and I was embarrassed to share my feelings. My psychiatrist understood this hesitation and used my journal as a way to bridge the gap. She would read entries from it and ask me questions based on what I had written, which made me feel more comfortable and helped me open up. Expressing my thoughts had always been easier on paper than in real life, so the journal became a valuable tool in our sessions. Through it, she could see a clearer picture of what I was going through. As days and weeks passed, I grew more comfortable around her. I began to share more about my experiences and how I had been treated by my family all my life. Bit by bit, I told her about the favoritism, the constant blame, the emotional neglect, and the feelings of isolation and worthlessness that had plagued me for years. For the first time, I felt like someone was truly listening to me and validating my experiences. It was a slow and sometimes painful process, but gradually I started to see that my feelings were justified and that I wasn't the problem my family had made me out to be. When my psychiatrist finally called my parents in for a session and told them how wrong it was to treat me as an inferior child, they were taken aback. Initially, they were very defensive, refusing to accept any responsibility for my feelings. They argued that they had worked hard to provide for me and that I should feel grateful instead of blaming them for everything. However, my psychiatrist didn't let them off easily. She pointed out that they were the ones who decided to have children and bring me into this world, so they couldn't use their provision as a justification for their emotional neglect and favoritism. Throughout the session, my psychiatrist detailed the numerous instances I had shared with her where my parents had wronged me. She talked about the favoritism, the blame, the emotional neglect, and the anxiety and depression I had suffered as a result. She methodically laid out the evidence from my childhood, showing them how their actions had deeply affected me. By the end of the session, my parents were silenced and looked embarrassed. They had never been confronted so directly with the consequences of their actions, and it was clear that they were taken aback by the realization of the harm they had caused. I thought that after the session there would be a positive change in my parents. However, on our drive back home, my dad informed me that they could no longer allow me to see the psychiatrist, claiming she was clearly biased towards me. My mother chimed in, agreeing with him, and added that since I blamed them for everything, there was no point in continuing with the sessions and wasting their money on something that wasn't helping me. I felt utterly defeated and sad. Despite everything that had been discussed, they were still trying to turn the blame back onto me. It was as if the session with the psychiatrist had never happened. They were completely unwilling to acknowledge their role in my suffering. Being a minor, I had no power to defy them at the time or to continue the therapy without their permission. Although the sense of helplessness was overwhelming, I felt somewhat better prepared to handle my emotions after all the sessions I had done with my psychiatrist. The therapy had given me tools to manage my feelings and a clearer perspective on my situation. I understood that the only person who could truly change my circumstances was me. I resolved to take control of my life. This meant dedicating myself to my studies with renewed determination. I began studying harder than ever before, aiming to improve my grades significantly. I saw getting into a good university as my way out of the stifling environment I was in. It became my primary goal in life. I also made a conscious effort to disengage from my family. Whenever I was around them, I would mentally shut off, trying to preserve my sanity by minimizing my emotional involvement. I stopped writing in my journal, recognizing that keeping my innermost thoughts on paper could lead to them being used against me. By focusing on my academic goals and setting clear boundaries with my family, I began to create a space where I could eventually break free and build a future that was not defined by their limitations and biases. In the end, when I went off to college with a full scholarship, one that my parents were against because it was too far away, I didn't care about their opinion. I was resolute and made sure to take all my important documents with me as I moved out. Although my parents didn't realize it at the time, that was the last time they saw me for a very long time. Despite their attempts to call or visit me at college, I kept my distance. I rarely interacted with them, never returning home during holidays. When they tried to guilt-trip me, I would immediately disengage, refusing to let them manipulate me into feeling responsible or blame me for anything. I cut off all contact with my sister, effectively treating her as if she didn't exist. With the freedom and independence I had fought so hard to achieve, I focused on my future. I landed an amazing job after completing my degree and never looked back. For years, I continued to treat my parents with the same emotional distance and attachment they had shown me. However, everything changed when I was about to get married to the love of my life. My parents, having heard the news about my upcoming wedding from cousins and other relatives, reached out to me. They were clearly taken aback that they were not invited to such an important occasion in my life. Their call was a surprising one. They grudgingly apologized for everything, acknowledging their wrongdoings and expressing regret for their past behavior. They admitted that while they couldn't change the past, they wanted to create new memories with me. Given that I was about to start a family of my own, they implored me to forgive them and allow them to be a part of this new chapter in my life. Their apology was an unexpected development, and it forced me to confront a range of emotions. Since I was entering a new chapter in my life, I decided to let go of the grudge and invited my parents to my wedding. They also requested that my sister attend, but I firmly refused, and they didn't push the issue further. My parents had a wonderful time at the wedding, and looking back, I don't regret inviting them. They were genuinely happy for me and my husband, which made the decision feel right. Since then, I've made an effort to visit my parents' home from time to time for dinner, just to catch up. During these visits, I sometimes have to interact with my sister. She still tries to infuriate me with small, mean comments about my marriage or my family, but I make sure to address her behavior directly and put her back in her place. Helen's bitterness towards me has only intensified over time after she found out I have a better relationship with my in-laws than she has with her husband's family. Apparently, her in-laws still detest her and have never fully accepted her into their family. This is why she often makes subtle comments about my husband or my in-laws, trying to put them down. She uses these remarks as a way to express her frustration and dissatisfaction with her own circumstances. My dad has noticed this behavior on several occasions and has even asked her to stop, but Helen continues to make these hurtful comments regardless. For months ago, I found out that I was pregnant. My husband and I are absolutely overjoyed by the news. Given that he earns twice what I make, we decided together that it would be best for me to leave my job temporarily to focus on the pregnancy. This decision was supported wholeheartedly by my husband and my in-laws, who have been incredibly understanding and helpful throughout this process. When my sister found out that I had decided to leave my job to stay at home during my pregnancy, she was furious. Her anger stemmed from her own situation. Her husband never allowed her to be a stay-at-home parent because they relied on both of their incomes to make ends meet. Unlike me, Helen never had the chance to relax or take a break during her pregnancy. Hence, whenever we meet up, she voices her discontent towards me by criticizing my decision. She has called me foolish and has said it is humiliating to be a stay-at-home parent several times. I have simply laughed off her remarks and explained to her that I could return to work whenever I wanted thanks to my years of experience. However, Helen has tried to twist the situation by insisting that my husband is being controlling and that I should have never given up on my career. I find this ironic since it was my own choice to step away from work. I understand that her attempts to undermine my decision are clearly more about her own dissatisfaction in her life than any real critique of my choices. This is why I have tried to stay away from her as much as possible to maintain my own peace of mind and focus fully on enjoying my pregnancy. A week ago, My sister called me with an invitation to a dinner party she was hosting. She planned to have our entire family and her in-laws there, and she wanted both me and my husband to attend. Given that I hadn't been out much since my pregnancy, I saw this dinner party as a welcome distraction and a chance to socialize. I figured that with so many people around, my sister would likely focus less on me, which made me more inclined to attend. I agreed to go, but the evening didn't go as planned. My husband received some last-minute assignments that required him to work late into the evening. He was already stressed and kept apologizing profusely to me for not being able to leave his workplace on time. I understood that these things can happen, so I didn't hold it against him. When he finally came to pick me up, we were already quite late for the dinner party. Despite the delay, I decided not to cancel, believing it was better to go late than not at all. When we arrived at my sister's place, I quickly noticed that most of the guests had already finished their dinner and were engaged in casual conversation. Even my parents had left after dinner since my dad doesn't feel comfortable driving late at night. My sister immediately scolded us for being late, and while I didn't blame her for being frustrated, I stepped in to apologize on behalf of my husband, who was visibly embarrassed by the situation. She directed my husband to a seat and got him a plate of food, which was a relief. But then she pulled me aside and took me into the kitchen. There she revealed that since everyone had already had second or even third helpings, there was no food left for me. I was taken aback by this revelation, especially given that I was quite hungry and, being pregnant, felt even hungrier than usual. Despite my disappointment, I chose not to argue or complain about the situation. I understood that our lateness had caused this inconvenience, so I suggested to her that I could simply order something online. This way, I could still get something to eat without causing further disruption. She nodded and said she would order something for me, which was kind. But then she told me that since I had arrived so late and hadn't helped much during the evening, the least I could do now was clean up the dishes. I was taken aback by her request. I scoffed and told her that I hadn't expected to be asked to work for her simply because I was invited to the dinner party and happened to be late. I felt it was unreasonable to expect me to clean up her guests' plates just because of my tardiness. Her reaction was swift and angry. In a low, furious whisper, she retorted that as her sister, I should be helping her out, especially since she was the one who had done so much cooking the whole day. She pointed out my mother had even helped her out by serving the guests during dinner, so I should make myself helpful too since I was family. Helen emphasized that her husband never helped with the kitchen duties, so she needed my help. I argued back, pointing out that if Helen felt overwhelmed, she shouldn't have invited so many people. Her response was angry and dismissive. She told me I could never understand her situation, and that the least I could do was keep my mouth shut and help her out. Then, in a cutting remark, she said that now that I was pregnant, I was nothing more than a pathetic waitress for my husband at home, so it wasn't a big deal if I helped her out too. Her harsh words took me by surprise and cut deep. I was already feeling hungry and emotionally vulnerable, and the weight of her comments made tears well up in my eyes. I didn't want to give Helen the satisfaction of seeing me upset, so I quickly ran into one of her bedrooms and shut the door behind me. I needed to find a space where I could collect myself. Once inside, I could feel my old panic attack starting to resurface. The familiar sensation of not being able to breathe was overwhelming. I desperately hoped that my husband or anyone else wouldn't notice my distress or come after me. I needed this time alone to regain control over my emotions and find a sense of calm. After cooling down and reflecting on the situation, I was so enraged with Helen for her persistent comments and the way she kept treating me that I felt she needed to be taught a lesson once and for all. I decided to take action against her. I started by locating all the photos I had taken of my old journals. When I had moved out of my parents' place, I had taken my journal with me, and over the years, I had started to store images of the journal in my mail so I could never lose a record of it. This is how I was able to find photos of my old diary entries, which detailed all the humiliations and grievances I had endured at the hands of my sister years ago. That night, before my husband and I left, I made the decision to send all the photos to my brother-in-law, as he was the only one that my sister was afraid of. I knew my parents would simply scold her for the way she behaved with me, but she would never, ever change. I wanted to make Helen experience a fraction of the humiliation she justifiably deserved at the hands of her husband. I wrote a detailed message to him explaining how Helen had been a significant bully in my life. In the message, I recounted how Helen had invited me to the dinner party only to make me clean up after her and the rest of the guests. I laid out how her resentment towards me seemed to stem because she was just jealous that I had a more considerate husband. My goal was to provide him with a clear picture of Helen's behavior and how it had affected me, hoping that this might lead to a better understanding or intervention from his side. As you can imagine, it led to a nasty fight between Bill and Helen. Bill could not believe that she had been bullying me constantly for years and had even told our parents that he now sees Helen in a different light. My mother completely blames me for their fight as she feels I crossed the line by exposing my sister, while my dad has chosen to be a bit more neutral. Update 1. For everyone asking, my husband is equally enraged with my sister after hearing about what she said to me during the party. He had no idea, but after I told him everything, he decided to call my sister to express his frustration and set her straight. I've never seen him this upset before, and I'm sure Helen must have been quite shaken by his reaction. Also, he has made it very clear to her that she should refrain from making any more comments about our family, especially given that she doesn't know the full story. Update 2. The reason my brother-in-law is so angry with Helen is because his own family has always perceived her as selfish and inconsiderate. For all the years that they have been married, Helen has a pattern of blaming everyone but herself whenever there's a disagreement or conflict. For a long time, Bill has been giving her the benefit of the doubt since he loves her. However, when I shared my journal entries with him, it was truly an eye-opening experience for him. Although he had always noticed that Helen and I were not very close, he had never been aware of our complicated history. Helen had conveniently never told him the truth. This lack of transparency meant that he had only seen a surface-level version of our relationship and was unaware of the depth of the issues that had existed between us. Hearing my side of the story finally filled in many gaps and significantly altered his understanding of my sister. It further proved how much his family was actually right about Helen. When Bill reached out to me this week, he told me all this. He also wanted to hear everything directly from my perspective. I was more than willing to talk, and we had an in-depth conversation over the phone. I recounted all the difficult experiences I endured as a child, emphasizing how my parents consistently favored my sister. I explained how my psychiatrist had tried to address these issues with my parents, but they never acknowledged their faults until I had almost cut them off after leaving for college. During our conversation, my brother-in-law also opened up about his own experiences with Helen. He shared how she sometimes treated him in a similar manner, but he had always attributed it to her being just herself. While he acknowledged his own flaws in their relationship, hearing how she had bullied me throughout the years and even as an adult was a revelation for him. It has really made him rethink their entire relationship. He is also afraid that Helen might be behaving this cruelly towards their child behind his back. Update 3. Clearing up some of your doubts here for the last time. First of all, my sister naturally held me responsible for everything and sent me several nasty messages after the party until my husband decided to intervene and shut her up. Since then, she hasn't reached out or said a word to me. Secondly, my mother has been insistent that I apologize and tell Bill that I over-exaggerated the incidents from my childhood. I firmly refuse to do this, making it clear that if she continues to support my sister's stance, my husband and I will cut her off. My dad, however, understands why I acted as I did. Lastly, I don't know what decision Bill will take regarding his relationship with Helen. At the end of the day, my only goal was to expose my sister and make her see that she couldn't just keep getting away by putting me down. I don't regret what I have done at all. Now it is completely up to Bill to decide what's best for his future. Now on to the next story. Story 5. My mom blamed me for my divorce when my husband walked out on me for another woman and told me I was a disgrace to the family for not being able to make the marriage work. Hey, I'm 48F and I have a 23-year-old son, and he's getting married in 2 weeks. A few days back, my mother, 70F, who I haven't been in touch with for the past 16 years, got in touch with me because she wanted to attend her grandson's wedding. We haven't been in touch because 16 years ago, my ex-husband cheated on me, and I filed for a divorce. My mother decided to blame me for it. My ex-husband and I had been together for just a year when I got pregnant, and I decided to keep the baby, but I had given him the option to leave if he didn't want to stay with me. I was ready to be a mother at the time, but he wasn't ready to be a father. We did end up getting married, though, because of pressure from his family since they wanted to have a relationship with their grandson. So, he had to marry me because of his family, and like most other couples who end up in this situation, we were not happy. Life after marriage was difficult since my ex-husband was constantly fighting with me, and after a few years we just stopped talking. Then, when my son was 7 years old, I discovered a few messages on his phone, and I realized that he had been cheating on me with his friend for a year. That was the end of our relationship. I moved out that day and filed for a divorce that week itself. Under circumstances like that, I would have expected my family to support me, and my father actually did support me, but my mother had told me to go back to him and try to make that marriage work. I don't know why, but she believed that my ex-husband had decided to cheat on me because I was the one who hadn't been able to keep him happy in the marriage, and so he had decided to look for happiness elsewhere outside of the marriage. She thought that it was my fault that we were getting divorced and had told me that it was my duty as his wife to try my best to make the marriage work, and it didn't matter that he had cheated on me. What mattered was that we could still forget about all of this and try to make it better for the future. I thought that her ideas were archaic, and we had fought a lot over the things that she said to me because I had believed that the least she could do for me was be supportive of me. But instead, she was insisting that I go back to the man who hadn't been able to give me any sort of happiness or hope for the future in the 7 years that we had been together. I was personally relieved that I was going to be able to leave him because for so long, the only reason I had tried to make it work with him was because of my son. But after he had cheated and I found out about it, I had come to the realization that if I stayed in this relationship, then neither would I ever end up being happy, nor would my son. So, it would be better for everyone if we ended this sham of a marriage, and my ex-husband and I agreed on that, but my mother didn't. After I filed for a divorce, my mother kept bothering me for a bit, but I didn't bother to pay attention to her and decided to go through with the divorce anyway. At least my father was supporting me, so I wasn't too worried. But unfortunately, for months into the divorce proceedings, I lost my father to a heart attack. It was really sudden. At the time, my mother and I had not exactly been getting along well because she thought I was messing things up for myself by getting that divorce. So, at the time that my dad passed away, I had only been talking to him, but I had been avoiding my mother for a couple of weeks. When I reached out to her to tell her that I wanted to help her plan the funeral so that we could reconcile, she told me to leave her alone and said that she wanted nothing to do with me anymore. She called me a disgrace to the family since I was one of the first women in our family to actually leave their husband instead of tolerating whatever they did. And she told me that it was my fault that my husband had left me for another woman because I was too selfish and never cared about anyone's happiness except for my own. My father had already passed away, so the only person who had been connecting the both of us was gone, and with him gone, I didn't feel the need to ever speak to my mother again after the things that she had said to me. She had been horrible to me, and after I attended my dad's funeral, I decided that I was never going to see or speak to her again, and I'm pretty sure that she was fine with it because after that, she did not try to reach out to me either. I was completely on my own during the divorce because I'm not very close to the rest of my family, and I only had a few friends to help me out. After everything was finalized, I decided to start applying to jobs outside of the state because I just couldn't bear to live there anymore. Luckily, I got a well-paying job within a few weeks. Within a month of my divorce being finalized, I left everything behind and moved away. I had full custody of my son since his father hadn't actually been interested, and I had seen that coming because even though we had been together for 7 years for our son's sake, he had never really been invested in our son like I was. He had visitation rights, but he never utilized those after the divorce, apart from the holidays. But even those visits on the holidays stopped after a year or two, and he continued to pay child support but never bothered to see his son. I haven't heard from him for a really long time, but I know from a couple of old friends that he's doing great and he's married to the friend that he had that affair with. As for my family, I never was particularly close to anyone, and neither were they bothered about me, so I haven't been in touch with them ever since I left, and my mother and I have never spoken in the past 16 years. I'm putting all of this out because I want everyone to know that since my son was 7 years old, I have raised him completely on my own. I have handled my work and managed to build a business and raise him all on my own without any support, emotional or otherwise, not even from my own mother. So, when a few days ago she showed up at my house uninvited, I was pretty surprised. She is pretty old now, but so am I, and I wasn't happy on seeing her, so I did not invite her in. When I asked her how she found me, she told me that she had asked a couple of my high school friends, and one of them had told her. Then she told me that she had come all the way here to ask me if she would be allowed to be a part of the wedding of her grandson. She told me that she had been thinking about it ever since she heard that my son was engaged, since I had posted about it on social media, and I'm guessing people from the family must have seen that or something. She knew that we hadn't spoken in the past 16 years, but she felt that it was time to bury the hatchet and make peace for the sake of her grandson, because she wasn't sure how much time she had left, and she wanted to get the opportunity to bond with him, even if it was just a little. But she didn't say the one thing that I expected her to say, and that was that she was sorry for everything that she had said to me in the past. I waited for a bit for her to say that, and then I might have even considered accepting her request to be present at the wedding. But she just stared at me without saying anything, and it was so frustrating that I laughed in her face, and I told her that no, I definitely did not want her at the wedding, and I'm sure that neither would my son. Then I asked her to leave because I didn't want to speak with her anymore, and she left. But she looked very shocked with the way that I had behaved with her. After she was gone, I decided to call up my son and tell him about what just happened, because after all, this was his wedding, and he should also have a say in what happens. I was pretty certain that he was going to tell me that I had done the right thing by asking his grandmother to leave. But after I told him everything, he told me that I might have been a bit too quick in asking her to go away. I hadn't seen that coming and was disappointed that he was not on my side. But then he kept talking and explained to me that it had been 16 years since we last spoke, and neither of us had felt that it was necessary to reach out to the other, which is fine because what my mother had done back then was unacceptable, and I had my reasons not to speak to her. But now, since she had made the effort to reach out to me, I should have at least invited her in and tried to speak to her instead of telling her to go away. Maybe she hadn't apologized right off the bat, but I can chalk that up to old age, and the least I could have done was at least give her an opportunity to speak to me and try and make things right. My son was the one who told me that I should reach out to her again and just talk to her once, and maybe we'll be able to make things right. He also reminded me that my mother is also getting old, and she might not have a lot of time left, so after she's gone, he wouldn't want me to regret letting go of this one opportunity to make things right between the two of us. Of course, he told me that in the end it has to be my decision, but that's what he would suggest to me. His suggestion actually seems pretty reasonable, but it's just been so long that I don't feel like speaking to my mother anymore. All that hurt and resentment is still inside of me somewhere, and I don't know if I'll ever be able to let that go. But what he said about my mother getting old and not having enough time was also true, and truth be told, I don't know how I feel about that. It's just all a mess in my head right now, and I feel like my brain is divided into two parts right now. One that wants to reach out to my mother and speak to her, and the other that keeps reminding me of all the things that she had said to me when I was going through the toughest time in my life, and she never bothered to reach out to me in the past 16 years. So, I'm stuck on whether or not to reconcile with my mother after 16 years of no contact. Update 1. Hey everyone, so there are just 4 days to go before my son gets married, and a few days back, after speaking to my son, I decided that I was going to give it a try and actually try to fix my relationship with my mother. He was thrilled about it, and he told me that he would be there for it as well in case I needed moral or emotional support, and I really was grateful for it. The only issue was that we didn't exactly know how to get through to her or if she was even here anymore. But thankfully, I asked a couple of my friends from high school, and one of them confessed to having given her my address because she had been pestering them nonstop, and so she just caved and sent her my address. Then I asked her to give me my mother's contact info if she could, and she was able to arrange for it in a while, and that's how we contacted her. I called her up, and when she picked up the phone, she was pretty surprised to hear me on this end. But anyway, I invited her over for dinner, and I told her that I would be willing to speak to her about all of this if she was still here. Luckily, she hadn't left and was planning on going back after a week, since she was staying here with her niece's family, and they were quite happy to have her here anyway. Last evening, she came over for dinner, and it was really awkward and weird, but I was thankful that my son and his fiancée were here to try and diffuse the situation. My mother told me about her life and how it had been for her for the past 16 years, and I told her a little about how it had been for me. Apparently, 6 years ago, my mother had remarried, but unfortunately, lost her second husband a few months ago. It had been really lonely for her in the past couple of months, especially after her second husband had passed away as well, and she realized that she hadn't exactly done the right thing by pushing her own daughter away. She told me that she was really sorry that she had been so horrible to me in the past and told me that I didn't deserve what I had been through. It was quite surreal for me to hear her say that because I really hadn't expected her to apologize, and I still couldn't believe it because this was finally happening after 16 years. Anyway, while she apologized, she started crying, and she told me that she knew that she wasn't ever going to get these 16 years back and that what happened was irreversible. But she still wanted to make the rest of her life count and do something right for once. When she started crying, I started feeling bad for her, and I told her that now that she was here, we were going to really give it a try and make things right between us again. But she just couldn't stop sobbing, and after one point we had to abandon dinner just so that we could console her because she was sobbing so violently. It was clear that she had been holding herself back for a really long time, and now the dam had finally burst. She just kept telling me that she was really sorry about everything and that she hadn't been a good mother, and she wanted to apologize to me for her failure. So after a while, I just decided to hug her so she could calm down for a bit, and then I took her to the guest room so she could lay down and rest. Then my son, his fiancée, and I went back to dinner and finished it all up. While she was resting, my son and I got to talking, and I told him that I was really happy that he suggested that we reconcile or at least try to talk to each other because so far things have been going pretty well. After so many years, it's definitely not going to be easy to repair our relationship, but we have to start somewhere if we want that, and this is a good place to start. My mother ended up spending the night here that day, and the next morning when she left, I told her to get all her things and stay with me until it was time for her to go back. She agreed readily, and my cousin and her family moved her in here. They're distant cousins, so I'm not very close to them, and I honestly didn't even know that I had family here. But I thanked them as well, and they told me that they were grateful that I was taking over from here because for the last couple of days, all my mother had been talking about was me and how she had screwed everything up. So they believed that my decision to have her move in with me for the next couple of days was a good one since it would help us reconcile, and I agree. My mother hasn't broken down anymore after that day, and things are still a bit awkward and strained between us. But I know that she's trying to erase the gap of 16 years as best as she can. The wedding is coming up, so I've been busy with that as well, and I also have work to attend to, so we mostly only get to talk to each other peacefully in the evenings, and our conversations have been pretty nice so far. It makes me feel glad that I decided to give this a chance because I feel like I might be able to get my old relationship with her back again. Update 2. Hello everyone. So my son got married last week, and 2 days after that, he and his wife left for their honeymoon. The wedding went really well, everything was exceptionally beautiful, and my mother was glad to be there as well. She kept talking about how wonderfully I had raised my son even though I had been all on my own, and she told me that she would have never been able to do it on her own if she had been in my place, so it was really a commendable job that I had done. My son and his now wife have been together for the past 10 years, and that's something that came up pretty frequently during the wedding, and my mother told me later on that even though my son was his father's kid as well, she couldn't see even the slightest resemblance to him. That was a good thing because I had raised a good man. She acknowledged that she had been wrong about my ex-husband and told me that I had done the right thing by leaving him, and finally she explained why she had been so against the idea of me leaving my husband. My mother had been raised in a very strict Catholic family, and I knew that. I was also aware of the fact that her parents believed that getting a divorce was not a valid solution to anything, and she had been raised to believe the same thing since they didn't even recognize divorce, and I was pretty much the first woman in my family to get a divorce because everyone had had a similar kind of upbringing. Even my father came from a similar family, but his family was not as strict as my mom's. However, even in his family, divorce was not encouraged, and when I had decided to leave my husband, I hadn't posted about it or anything, but word still got around because I had left his house and stuff. And when that happened, people in my family started gossiping and telling my mother that she needed to stop me from leaving my husband because it was a sin. Once we were married, and there was nothing that we could do to reverse that, so the only option I had was to just make it work, and they made it seem like cheating was not even that big of a deal because their husbands used to do it constantly. So they thought that I should treat it as something that just happens and not take it seriously either. But I did not function with the same moral code, and I decided to leave, and that created quite a stir in the family. People were quite upset that I was doing something like this, And that's why my mother kept trying to discourage me, because she knew that the family would cut me off and keep gossiping about me behind my back. In some way, I guess she thought she was protecting me in some weird, twisted way. But that's not how it works. Things only got worse when my dad passed away because people were already upset with me. And when that happened, they started taking up the opportunity to make it seem like it was my sin that my dad had been punished for. My mother told me that a bunch of relatives started brainwashing her and believing that because I had decided to go against my husband and leave him in spite of their advice, it was my father who had to bear the punishment of my decision. My mother had lost her soulmate at the time because, unlike my marriage, both my parents had been in love with each other. She was very vulnerable at the time, and her family took advantage of that and decided to turn her against me completely. That was why she started to believe that maybe it was actually my fault that she had lost her husband, and that's why she decided to cut me out of her life. When I learned about all of this, even though I knew some bits of it, I felt angry and hurt all over again, because even though I had known that her family had a huge part to play in all of this, I didn't know what they had been saying about why my dad had passed away. I couldn't believe that even my mother had believed it was my fault that she had lost her husband back then. I felt like I wanted to draw back from her once again, but she told me that it had taken her a long time, but she had realized that she was the one who had screwed up by believing whatever nonsense had been fed to her by her family, and it was completely her fault that she had pushed me away from her for so many years. She also told me that after she got married for a second time, her late husband had tried to get her to talk to me on multiple occasions and had tried to get her to cut her family off because they were very toxic, but she had refused. It was only towards the end of his life, when he had fallen very ill, that she realized what he was talking about and started to acknowledge her mistakes. And she told me that she really wanted to tell me that I was stronger than most of the women in our family, and maybe everyone resented me for that. But anyway, we cannot change the past, and now that we have started trying to fix our relationship, I don't want to go back on that. So, my mother and I are still staying together, and we are actively trying to reconcile and make up for lost time. Update 3. Hey guys, 3 weeks have passed since my last update, and my mother has still been living with me, but she has decided to go back by the end of this week. Things have been going really well, and we have been bonding occasionally. It still gets really weird and silent, but we have been trying not to let that get in the way of our reconciliation. Anyway, she has decided to go back for a couple of months so she can sort everything out back home and then move back in here with me permanently. I know a lot of people are not going to agree with my decision, but she's not getting any younger, and I really want to be there for her. When we were younger, when I was a kid, she was my best friend, and slowly we are going back to that relationship that we used to have when I was little, and I don't want to lose it anymore. So I think it's for the best if she comes back to live with me permanently, and I've also been pretty lonely ever since my son moved out, so I think I could do with some company. My mother has told me that she's going to put our old house up for sale because the memories attached to that house are just too much to handle, and I agree. I think it's the best decision she could make right now. I can't go with her because I have work here, but my son has told me that he's going to return in a couple of days, so he'll handle everything. Thankfully, my mother doesn't really have any serious health problems as of now, so she can handle herself alone, but she just needs somebody to be there for her while she's traveling. Once she comes back, we have also been talking about going to therapy together. It's my cousin who told us to give it a try, and to be honest, my mom wasn't really into the idea because it's a very newfangled concept for her, but I told her that it would be worth it. So now I'm just going to wait for her to come back after she's done with all the work back home, and then she's going to be living here. I'm quite happy about it because she and I have been spending a lot of time together recently, and I have been having a great time with her. In these past 16 years, I'd almost forgotten how fun and witty she could be when she wanted to be. Only the bad parts had stayed with me after our massive fallout. But slowly but surely, we're getting the good parts back again. I really don't know how much time I have left with her. If I'm lucky, then I might get a lot, but whatever I have left, I want to make the most of it. We have spent enough of our lives being angry at each other. I think it's time that we leave all that in the past. Update 4. Hi guys, so I have absolutely heartbreaking news for everyone. My mother has unfortunately passed away. It has been 5 months since she moved back home, so she could wrap up all the work she had there and sell the house. At first, I didn't think that it would take her so long to sell the house, but she told me that she had other things to attend to as well before she moved in with me. I didn't think much of it, and we kept in touch over the past 5 months. We would often FaceTime each other, and she had started to look quite sick, but whenever I would ask her about it, she told me it was just the camera, and her phone had poor quality, which was true, so I didn't question it. Then, 2 days ago, I was informed that she had passed away in the hospital. She had a nurse who had taken her to the hospital in the middle of the night, but she hadn't been able to make it. Apparently, she had been diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia about 2 months before she came to see me. She had been undergoing treatment, but the disease had already gotten to a stage when it was too late to do anything. So for a few weeks, she decided to come see me instead of wasting her time on treatment because she knew that she was going to pass away eventually, and she wanted to make things right with me before that happened. She never told me anything about it because she didn't want to make me upset, and after she passed away, it was her nurse who told me everything. I'm still trying to process and cope with this loss, but I'm really happy about the fact that I decided to give it a chance, and even though I had very little time to spend with her before she eventually passed away, I'm very grateful that I even got that time. My son was right. I would have definitely regretted it if I had not given this a chance. For those of you who had said that the only reason she wanted to make things right with me at this age was because she needed somebody to take care of her at her old age, I guess you were wrong because she knew she wasn't going to make it and she didn't need me to take care of her. She just needed me to forgive her and spend some time with her before she passed on. I'm organizing her funeral at the end of this week and flying back home for it. Condolences have been pouring in from her family who always hated me. So I know that it's all pretend, but I don't really care about it. I'm content with the time that we got to spend before she passed away, and I'm always going to cherish it. Now on to the next story. Story 6. My wife defended her friend who seduced me. I punched her for crossing the line, divorced, and now they're begging for forgiveness. Hi everyone, this is a lurker. I hope this works, because I tried posting this from a different account and it didn't work. I am a 35-year-old man who has spent almost a decade with my lovely 34-year-old wife. We don't currently have any children. For over 15 years, my wife and her best friend Amy have been friends since my time in college where I first met my wife. Although Amy and I have never been the best of friends, we have been friendly for my wife's benefit. She's noisy, annoying, and entitled, the type that interrupts every discussion. I've always thought that about her. She constantly finds a way to get in the way, whether it's during a private chat or a night out with friends. For instance, over dinner with our long-standing friends, my best friend and I were discussing infertility problems in his marriage. Amy managed to be nosy, even though we were talking softly enough that no one could hear us over the noise. She remarked that she would slaughter herself if she were unable to perform the one task that women were intended to perform. My best friend Max and his wife were so enraged by this that they excused themselves and departed early to return home. Amy's obnoxious demeanor caused her boyfriend, Kid, to break up with her. What triggered him, in my opinion, was when Amy deliberately neglected to feed their dog while he was out on business, while she was intoxicated and calling him to come get her. The dog was dozing off, and that's only the beginning. Amy has always treated me strangely. She has been DMing me on Instagram all the time, trying to start a conversation about rumors circulating in our friend circle or just plain unrelated topics. She has always been disregarded by me. Her odd behavior has always been overlooked by my wife, who has never accepted that her closest friend might be malicious. Amy visited my wife at our home following their breakup because she wasn't feeling well that day. My wife took some sleeping pills and was asleep in an hour. I recommended that Amy sleep in the guest bedroom for the sake of my wife, because I couldn't ask her to leave in her current state. After agreeing, she retired to her bed. She walked in wearing only her underwear later that evening when I was cleaning up in the kitchen after dinner. She pretended to be surprised and said she was unaware that I was still in the kitchen. I chose to end the evening because I was so uncomfortable. She began stripping, though, and came up to me, telling me that my wife didn't need to know and that she had noticed my gaze on her. I told her that she had a bad idea and should feel guilty for hurting her best friend, because I couldn't understand her at all. She nearly jumped in front of me and made unwanted physical contact with me as I attempted to exit the kitchen. Without a second thought, I panicked and punched her in the face. She had a bruised eye. She began to scream so loudly that my wife was startled and staggered into the kitchen to discover her closest friend battered and naked. Amy went on to call me a vile person, accuse me of attempting to abuse her, and order my wife to file for divorce. I retaliated by saying that I punched Amy because she came to me nude and wouldn't leave even after I turned her down. Without a word, my wife passed out right away. I took her to the hospital right away. Although she is now fine, my wife won't discuss what happened with me. Amy, meanwhile, claims that I tried to attack her in our buddy group. While most people don't think she's real, some people still hold on to the idea that you should always believe an accusation. Others claim that by hitting her, I made a mistake and inflamed her rage. My life has been ruined by Amy. My wife is divorcing me, and I'm scared this will end up in court. I've already considered harming myself several times. From here, I have no idea where to go. What ought I to do? What should I do next? I would appreciate any advice. I've been considering sending a text to Amy's ex-boyfriend, Kid, who broke up with her, to inquire if she has done something comparable to what he knows. By demonstrating a factual pattern of action rather than a word-against-word scenario, he may contribute to the plausibility of my story. However, I'm not sure if this is a smart idea. If I chose to sue her for defamation, it might be best to first consult with an attorney to see what kind of proof I would want. It may be essential to work with a lawyer who has experience in these kinds of cases to develop an action plan. In this manner, I'll be ready and have someone to help me if things take an unforeseen turn. Amy might renounce her unfounded charges in public if she faces legal pressure. People are making me feel awful about punching her, but that doesn't mean I'm going to be kind to her after assaulting me. Amy is now making grave, untrue accusations that have the potential to ruin my life. These are illegal acts. This is not a mere drama. Amy says she didn't realize I was still there when she walked to the kitchen to grab a glass of water. Then she accused me of using her. The incident happened about 3 o'clock in the morning. The time now is 8 a.m. Amy shared her made-up story in our group chat after she left our house. Due to the early obligations of the majority of our friend group, the false information disseminated swiftly. I've started getting private messages with thoughts and suggestions. While the majority support me, some individuals believe her account of events, while some criticize me for punching her. My wife won't talk to me and has been up all night. I'm allowing her time to take it all in. Update. I want to start by expressing my gratitude to everyone for their guidance and support as I've been navigating this circumstance. However, I've also gotten a lot of negative feedback, with some people saying that the story is a grotesque fiction or a hoax, which is untrue. I haven't been able to eat or sleep since I'm still dealing with the fallout. I hope you find peace in your lives. Everyone who messaged me saying I should have slept with Amy or calling me a sicko. I hope the males who labeled me a fool treat the ladies in their lives with equality and respect. I made the decision to follow advice and get in touch with Amy's ex-boyfriend, Kid, within the last 9 hours. He admitted that this wasn't the first time Amy had made similar accusations and was just as upset as I was. He acknowledged that she had manipulated him into continuing the relationship in the past by threatening to accuse him of abuse. In order to avoid carrying out her threats, Kid installed covert cameras and sought legal advice which allowed her to flee. This insight benefited me since he was understanding and encouraging. I pointed out all the flaws in Amy's story and brought up the proof that Kid still had. I informed her that I was prepared to move forward if she wanted to take her accusations to court. After her breakup, she confessed she wasn't in her right mind, apologized, and was terrified. In our group chat, I was able to persuade her to acknowledge this, since I didn't want untrue allegations about me to continue to circulate. Her admission made everything clear to anyone who might still be confused. She left the group chat shortly after and has since stopped communicating with everyone. She is practically inaccessible. Today, I filled my wife in on everything that had transpired. All of the texts, including Amy's confession, had previously been viewed by her, but she admitted to me that she had been thinking about getting a divorce and honestly didn't know who to trust. It was a devastating time. I informed her that I needed time to take in everything that had transpired over the last 14 hours. That night, I chose to spend the night in the guest bedroom. It bothers me that it required Amy's confession for her to support me, even though I'm glad she now believes me. After 10 years of marriage, I would have thought my wife would know me better. However, I see that after 15 years of friendship, she didn't believe Amy was capable of such a thing. My marriage has suffered greatly, and even though I adore my wife, I can't get over this problem quickly. My wife owes Amy a debt of gratitude for assisting her in leaving an abusive home throughout their adolescence. This complicates things by establishing a power dynamic. She has, however, downplayed how traumatic this experience has been for me. She doesn't believe Amy is the bad guy, and she attributes Amy's actions to the emotional pain of her separation. More than 2 months have passed since the tragedy, and it has been a busy period. In summary, Amy pushed herself on me. I struck her, and she accused me of assault. My wife accepted her claims until Amy eventually confessed. Then my wife dismissed it as a miscommunication. I tried to keep the marriage going for 2 months. Nevertheless, my wife and Amy continued to get out frequently, and she talked eagerly about them as though her best friend hadn't just tried to destroy our marriage. A few days ago, my wife informed me that she and Amy were organizing a summer vacation to Greece, which was the final straw. I remained silent and turned away as she informed me about the trip. She followed me and inquired about my well-being. I expressed my disbelief that she would ignore the reality that Amy had accused me of abuse, pushed herself on me, and almost ended our marriage. I told her how terrible it was that she had been prepared to file for divorce right away, but she laughed it off and kept up her friendship with Amy. "Why can't you just get over it?" she asked, breaking down in tears. I'd had enough at that point. After telling her that we were divorcing, I turned to go and began packing my bags. She alternated between calling me derogatory names and pleading with me to stay, pulling my shirt, punching me, and hurling objects in an attempt to stop me. I departed and made my hotel reservation. Her friends and family are now bombarding my phone. After a while, my wife came upon this post and connected the dots. I'm proceeding with the divorce in spite of her entreaties. I went back home to formally request that she leave the residence. I warned her that I would call the police if she didn't leave. She even made an attempt to have sex with me in an effort to stop me. In addition, I challenged her regarding a purported Reddit account in which she purportedly sought out sugar daddies. I don't believe her, even if she denies everything. A few of you mentioned that this might have been a test or set up from the beginning. My wife never wakes up quickly after taking sleeping drugs, so it's conceivable. My wife probably dismissed the incident out of guilt. However, it only gets worse because she even brought up divorce in response to a fabricated claim that she knew was untrue. I want to start by expressing my gratitude to everyone for their support and kindness. I doubt I could have progressed this far without it. Since many of you have requested updates, here is the current situation. My wife is currently staying with Amy. After being expelled, she vowed to complicate the divorce, as was to be expected, but my attorney assured me that since we don't have children or joint property, there isn't much she can do. Before we were married, I owned my house. My wife texted me the other day, which surprised me. Since I want to preserve any messages as proof, I haven't blocked her. She informed me that she would sign the divorce papers since she no longer wanted to make it difficult. She revealed to me the shocking reason for the abrupt change. She wanted to be able to spend her days with the person she had been seeing. My heart ached once more, but she didn't say who this person was. How could she have met someone so fast? She probably has been having an affair, because it is quite unlikely that she met them after we split up. I can't deny that I loved her very much and did everything in my power to keep her happy. Even though our marriage is no longer together, it feels like everything is falling apart. Even though I know I'm still young and have my entire life ahead of me. About the Reddit account that purported to be her, I'm positive it was either Amy or her. Too many intimate details about my life were known by the account for it to be someone else. They were teasing me, whomever they were. After learning of the divorce, Hannah, a friend of mine, got in touch. She thinks that both Amy and my wife have been seeing her husband, Alex. The situation feels completely absurd right now, but I wouldn't be shocked if there were yet more to discover. I told Hannah to keep an eye out and collect as much proof as she could. That's the current situation, but I'll provide another update if anything new becomes available. I want to express my gratitude to everyone who has been following my tale. Your remarks have given me courage. I've heard from a lot of you that I'm acting morally. You're young and have your entire life ahead of you, one reader reminded me. Even though it may feel difficult right now, you will overcome it. Put yourself first and avoid expressing remorse or unhappiness in front of your ex. It will make her crazy, regardless of who she is currently seeing. Help Hannah expose her husband, said another. Cheaters should not be allowed to get away with their actions. Additionally, kindly update us on the status of the divorce. Lastly, there was a suggestion that the Amy event might have been a setup. The entire situation with Amy was probably staged either to get you to cheat and cover up her own adultery, or to remove you from the situation so she could play around unhindered. I appreciate your support, everyone. Your support makes it a little bit easier for me to persevere through this. Now on to the next story. Story 7. At my best friend's wedding, the groom admitted he wasn't sure if he wanted to marry her. What should I do? Alright, I was just a MOH in a wedding that ended in an absolute show. And I have to tell someone about it because I don't even know what to do or if I should do anything about this. I'm at a total loss. This was a first for me. My childhood friend was getting married today to her high school sweetheart. The wedding was a long time coming. They've been together for 6.5 years and share a 2-year-old son. They've been engaged for 3 years now because they delayed planning the wedding after she unexpectedly got pregnant with their son. So now the wedding was finally here. Earlier this year, she set a date and started planning. I was engaged this year and got married in July, and originally was just supposed to be a regular bridesmaid. The bride's sister was supposed to be the MOH, but they had a falling out. Basically, the bride would always call her sister ranting about her fiancé every time they would fight, which caused the sister to form a pretty negative opinion of him. The sister lives across several states away and doesn't see everything that goes on here. Her mind jumped right to abuse, and she told the bride if she marries him, she's not coming to the wedding. Now, here's the thing. Their relationship isn't perfect. They are young. They went through a lot very quickly and very young. Getting engaged, unexpected pregnancy, moving in together all happened very fast. They fought a lot. I had my concerns at first, but after spending a lot more time with them, I saw how much they genuinely loved each other, parented their son together well, and were working towards a future together. The bride and I have been close friends for so much of our lives. She is like family to me. I care for her deeply. When she asked me to step in as MOH, I said yes for those reasons. Cut to today, the wedding day. Everything was going well. The groom was getting emotional when they did their private vows, and before walking down the aisle, he was still wiping tears. It warmed my heart. Looking back now, I wonder what the heck was going through his head. Not sure they were tears of joy. As the night went on, the bride mingled and danced with her family. She had so much family that traveled from many states away to be here, and she wanted to be a good hostess to them. The groom was usually off talking with his own family when she was doing this, but for the most part, they stayed together. They sat together, ate together, danced to a few songs, played the shoe game. Then they were mingling separately with their families. Didn't think that was a big deal, as this is often how receptions go with so many people there pulling you in opposite directions. At one point, they both went inside the venue. Reception was outside for a while, and then she came out alone. She continued to chat with family and then, after a little bit, realized he was nowhere to be found. After a while of searching, we found him wandering around outside, going for a walk. The bride was pretty distraught at this point. I will add that the groom did have a good amount to drink during the party. Apparently, when they went inside the venue, he was angry at her for not spending enough time with him during the party and said they were hardly together the whole night. Once he got back from his little walk, they were just arguing inside their room, I guess. At this point, a lot of guests were leaving, and the ones left, me, my husband, the rest of the wedding party, and their immediate families, didn't really know what to do. We were supposed to do a big send-off for them, so we were just kind of waiting for that. We packed up all the stuff, broke down all the tables and chairs, loaded it in cars, and just waited. Me and the other bridesmaids pulled her aside to talk to her, but she was pretty deflated at this point. Apparently, the groom had taken his ring off and told her he wasn't sure he wanted to be married to her. At their wedding, mind you, they've been living together for 3 years. They share a child. They've been dating since 2018. Nothing about this was rushed other than maybe their ages. They are quite young, But I never thought of them as immature until this stunt he pulled at their wedding over not spending enough time together at the reception. Like, sorry, why not just not leave her side then? I just don't understand at all. We finally decided to just load their stuff in their car and tell them it's all loaded and they should probably go ahead and go to get some sleep before their flight tomorrow. At the car, we hugged goodbye and I left to come home. This girl is one of my absolute best friends. I hate that her beautiful wedding was ruined by her husband being petty and stubborn. She was in tears and distraught on her own wedding day. It's just awful. I don't really know where to go from here, if this is at all normal and something they will get past, or if this is more serious. I genuinely am rooting for them. But this whole situation just has me sitting in my car feeling confused and worried for my friend. They're leaving for their honeymoon tomorrow. Don't feel like it's an appropriate time to reach out and try to talk to her about all of this. Any advice is appreciated. I guess I'm thinking I check in via text a few times while they're traveling on the honeymoon and make sure it's going okay. And make plans to see her when she gets back and we can debrief everything then if she wants to get into it. Starting to think the sister might have been onto something. Now for some comments where Op replied. Comment 1. Ooh, lots of problems here. 1. The sis was on to something. If the bride is constantly calling her with complaints/fights, the groom is not a good fit for her. 2. The groom was drunk. This took his feelings from a 3. Hey, can we spend the rest of the reception together? To a 10. You are dead to me because you are ditching me at our wedding night for totally reasonable reasons. 3. Sounds like this wedding spat was just a representation of chronic issues between them. If this relationship is going to last, they need to see a therapist. This is beyond your aid, unfortunately. Personally, I wouldn't text or say anything today or tomorrow. She is probably distraught. They need to work out some things on their honeymoon. Maybe check in with her when she's back or she'll reach out to you if she needs advice. That's what I would want, anyways, but you know her best. Comment 2, literally this. I think when you said the sister doesn't see everything that goes on, I do. You're off by a lot. You're seeing the smoke show, the sister is hearing about the reality. OP. I'll add a little context here though. I grew up with the bride and besides her sister, I'm probably the only friend she has that is her friend. I did not know her husband before they got together and still didn't know him super well before she got pregnant. Her other friends are all extensions of him somehow. His siblings and in-laws, his friends' girlfriends. I feel like a lot of the issue is that she needs more people to actually talk to. Her sister will always take her side. His family will always take his side and shrug things off as, that's just how he is. I have just tried my best to be somewhat of a Switzerland presence for her. She knows I support her, but in that, I also support her relationship and I know marriage is hard, especially with kids, so I try to support them both. Comment 3. I have so many questions just trying to understand the dynamics of this group. 1. In what scenario did she not grow up in the same house as her sister? 2. What were his parents doing at the reception and were they aware of his hissy fit? 3. Is it safe to assume that his parents were still there at the end? 4. What were her parents doing at the end? 5. Who had their child? Op. 1. Half-sisters through adoption by the dad. 2. His parents sat at their own table and didn't seem to care about mingling with her family, but I don't want to jump to conclusions as to why. 3. His parents were still there at the end and his dad looked really disappointed when helping us load their car. I pulled his mom aside and asked her to go talk to her son because she may be the only one he listens to right now. She did talk to him and was the one who ended up getting him to come out of his room. I DK what was said. 4. Her parents were helping clean up and I don't think they knew the full extent of what was going on. They were still talking to guests. It wasn't until the next day when I talked to both of them that I realized they were not aware of what the groom said about being unsure about the marriage, taking his ring off, etc. They thought they had a little spat that got resolved quickly before they left. 5. Groom's mom had the baby most of the time and towards the end of the night he fell asleep in the groom's sister's arms. He went home with the bride's parents that night because they're watching him while they go on honeymoon. Update. It's been a week now. A lot of people asked for an update. Some people on my original post were very adamant this relationship was abusive, citing red flags, research, evidence, and personal anecdotes that this story reminded you of. There were also several comments saying I was overreacting, the groom was just drunk, and they will probably be fine. I wanted to clarify some things from my original post. While my friend the bride does have her sister, she was the only child growing up in her house. In many ways, she truly is an only child. She is at least the only child of her mother. She already had a small circle. Her family lives all over the country and is not involved very much in her life. That was not the groom's doing. He did not isolate her. Secondly, I would like to clarify their ages because I didn't mention them in my last post. They started dating at 15 F and 16 M and got married at 21 and 22. Part of the reason I omitted it originally is because I didn't want people jumping to conclusions about their relationship because of their ages. There is a lot of stigma around getting married young, especially on Reddit, and I get it, the odds are stacked against you. That's why I decided to put their ages in now, because I realize it's important to understand they really do have so much growing and learning to do still. Now on to the update. It's pretty short. She Snapchatted me later that night after they got to their hotel and said as he began to sober up, he was realizing all that he ruined and was very apologetic. He realized they didn't get to do their last dance, their send-off, the bouquet and garter toss. She said he was crying. They talked it all out and she said it sucks that their wedding ended that way. But it was amazing up to that point, and the important thing is that they're married and going to spend the rest of their lives together. She said they're going to work past it, and I asked, how? Do you have a plan? Just want to be sure. She said they will work on their communication skills, and I once again recommended therapy. She said they'd talk about it and consider it. Then they were off on their honeymoon and seemed to be having a great time. I've checked in a bit when she has Snapchatted me some pics and they're doing well. She knows she can always come to me and she knows I'll support her no matter what. Right now, I'm going to do everything I can to help uplift them as a couple and help them form some better communication habits. Her sister didn't support her choice to stay with him, and that's why sister is not in her life anymore. I don't want that. I will support her choice, period. A few key takeaways. Be careful drinking on your wedding day. You don't need that much. The last thing you want is to get drunk on your wedding day and say/do something stupid as a result that you can't take back. One commenter put it really well. You may be able to overlook your partner's ugly parts now, but are you willing to let this be your life if they never change? I know there's a lot of people in this subreddit that are getting married, so I hope someone can learn something from this story. Now for some comments. Comment 1. I skimmed OP's responses and she literally says the friend likes to use Snapchat because the messages disappear so the groom won't see them if he goes through her phone. Then she adds a nice little tidbit that he's very controlling. But somehow the takeaway is to be careful about drinking on your wedding day and the couple is doing well. I'll chalk OP's utter lack of discernment up to her age as well because I'm going to assume she's also 21-22. Comment 2. He definitely sounds like an abuser, but I guess OP is one of those people who thinks abuse only counts if it's physical. But he's definitely emotionally abusive at the least. What OP is seeing is an abuse-love bomb cycle. OP mistakenly thinks the love bomb stuff proves that he loves her so much, when in fact that's merely a tactic to keep her from leaving him due to the abuse. Comment 3. How is the main takeaway? Don't drink too much at your wedding. People get wasted on their wedding day and don't take their ring off and say they shouldn't be married. I would say that's far more frequent than whatever this is. Comment 4. OP missed the point so hard I'm almost tempted to call her a troll. Like, how do you write that all out then not have an epiphany that the relationship was built on rotten foundations? Oh, but I've seen how much they love each other. And love is rarely enough to fix a fundamentally broken relationship. Those two need actual professional help and all they're doing is sticking their head in the sand. Now on to the next story. Story 8. My dad chose my cousin over me, funded his future, and ruined mine. But karma left him drowning in regret as I built my own life. I never imagined that I would be sharing this story, but here I am. I'm a 28-year-old man who has had a rather difficult life, particularly when it comes to family. My mother passed away while giving birth to me, which I suppose set the tone for the relationship I had with my father. He never really moved past her death and always treated me as if I were the reason she was gone. Naturally, I have no memories of my mother. But I've heard many stories from relatives about how thrilled she was to have me. She had always longed to become a mother and had faced years of fertility struggles before finally conceiving me. This knowledge only makes the whole situation more heartbreaking. She finally achieved her dream, only to have it tragically cut short. As I was growing up, our home was filled with photographs of my mother. My father kept everything just as she had left it, almost as if the house were a shrine to her memory. Her clothes remained hanging in the closet, and her books still lined the shelves. It felt as though I was living with the ghost of a woman I would never have the chance to know. Sometimes, I would sneak into their room just to touch her belongings, trying desperately to forge some sort of connection with the mother I never met. My relationship with my father, however, was entirely different. He was there in the physical sense, but emotionally, he might as well have been on a different planet. He went through the basic motions of parenting, ensuring that I was fed, clothed, and made it to school on time, but there was never any warmth or affection. No hugs, no words of love, not even a simple pat on the back for a job well done. I always felt like an outsider within my own home. Most days, my father would barely even look at me, let alone engage in conversation. When he did speak to me, it was usually to criticize or compare me to my cousin, Jake. Jake's father, my uncle, died in a car accident when Jake was 7, so my father kind of took him under his wing. I still remember the day we received the news about my uncle's death. It was a rainy Tuesday afternoon, and I was sitting at the kitchen table working on homework when the phone rang. My father answered, and I watched as his face crumpled while he listened to whoever was on the other end of the line. That was the first and only time I ever saw my father cry. After hanging up the phone, he sat down heavily at the table and stared off into space for what felt like hours. Jake began to spend a lot more time at our house after that. I was excited at first. I thought that having another kid around might make things more fun and might even help my dad open up a bit. But it didn't take me long to understand that Jake's presence made my relationship with my dad even worse. He often asked, "Why can't you be more like Jake?" Or Jake would never do that. It seemed like Jake was the son he had always wanted, and I was just there. Jake was sporty, friendly, and charming, which I wasn't. Jake was the life of the party, while I was shy and liked to read. It was delicious for my dad. I worked really hard to make my dad happy. It never seemed like enough. I tried to learn about his interests, got good grades, and joined every sports team. My dad thought Jake could never do a bad thing. He would compliment Jake on the smallest things, but I never got any credit for my own accomplishments. I won a science fair at school when I was about 12 years old. My project was a complicated model of the solar system that could move. I worked on it for weeks. I could hardly wait to tell my dad. I thought this would finally make him happy. His laughter and talk with Jake about a football game made me laugh when I got home. I told him I won, but he just nodded and went back to talking to Jake. Felt like I wasn't there at all. It gets worse as we age because of the bias. People always made fun of Jake and me because we were in the same grade. I did better in school than Jake did in high school, but my dad would always find ways to downplay my achievements. "Well, Jake's got more important things to think about than just grades," he would say. During one parent-teacher meeting, my English teacher raved about an essay I'd written. She told my dad it was one of the best papers she had ever seen from a kid my age and that she thought I would make a great writer. My dad just grunted and asked if this would help me get a big grant for sports. The teacher looked confused, and I was so embarrassed that my face burned. In spite of this, there remained a part of me that still yearned for change. I reasoned that perhaps everything would be fine if only I could locate the appropriate thing, the magic key unlocking my dad's adoration. I pursued that unattainable dream all of my childhood and during my teenage years. When it came time for college, the true kickback was, I had pushed my ass, enrolled at a decent university, and been ready to launch my future. Though I knew money would be limited, I reasoned my dad would contribute at least somewhat. Boy, I guess I was mistaken. The day I overheard my dad on the phone with Jake, informing him he would pay for his whole college tuition, will always be with me. My pulse dropped. My dad looked at me like I was insane when I asked if he could also assist me. "Jake needs it more. I can't afford to pay for both of you," he remarked. That's exactly how my college dreams vanished. I attempted to make it work, nevertheless, working evenings and weekends. I had a part-time job at a nearby diner. I applied for every scholarship I could locate, but it was not enough. The strain was intolerable. I was juggling my classes, working enough hours to pay for things, and still finding time to study and sleep. There has to be a give. After the first semester, I found myself having to drop out on my own. I couldn't afford it. The part-time work I could find hardly covered tuition. Jake was living it at a famous university, completely on my dad's money. Meanwhile, he would share images of his elegant dorm room, his spring break travels, the new laptop my dad had purchased for him for college on social media. Every post was like a knife turning in my gut. That moment was the breaking point for me. I gathered my belongings and left home, cutting off all contact with both my father and Jake. It was incredibly painful, but I knew I had to escape that toxic environment. I could no longer bear to live in the shadow of my deceased mother and the cousin who had somehow replaced me in my father's heart. The past few years have been challenging, to say the least. I've taken on various jobs, doing whatever I could to make ends meet. I've waited tables, worked in construction, pulled night shifts at gas stations, anything to ensure I had a roof over my head and food to eat. It has been difficult, especially when I see updates from Jake on social media about his incredible college experiences and the great job he secured after graduation. But despite everything, I'm gradually building a life for myself on my own terms. I now have a decent job, not something extravagant, but it covers the bills. I'm working as a manager at a local bookstore. It's not the career I envisioned, but I find solace in being surrounded by books all day. In addition, I'm taking night classes at the community college, working toward the degree I've always wanted. It's not an easy journey, but at least I'm making it on my own. Along the way, I've made some great friends, people who accept me for who I am, not for who they want me to be. They have become the family I never truly had. We have weekly game nights, go on camping trips when we can afford it, and support each other through thick and thin. It's far from perfect, but it's mine, and that makes all the difference. I thought I had left all that family drama behind me, but life has a funny way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. Yesterday, I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. When I answered, I was stunned to hear my dad's voice on the other end. It had been 3 years since we last spoke, and now he was reaching out for help. I'm not entirely sure how to feel about this, but one thing is certain. I am no longer that kid desperate for his approval. Update 1. It's been a week since my dad's unexpected call, and I'm still trying to process everything that happened. Speaking with him on the phone brought back a plethora of memories, the majority of which were not good. But his voice was different. Older, more worn out, more desperate. He began with small talk, asking how I was doing. It felt awkward and forced, as if he was trying to pretend the last few years hadn't happened. Then he got to the real reason for his call. He needed money, and a lot of it. At first, I was too shocked to respond. This was the man who had never given me a dime for college, who had chosen my cousin over me time and time again, and now he was asking me for financial help. The irony was not lost on me. When I finally found my voice, I asked him why he was coming to me. What about Jake, his golden boy? Shouldn't he be the one to help out? My dad fell silent for a moment, then mumbled something about Jake being busy with his new job and not having the means to help right now. I couldn't help but laugh. After years of being told how much better Jake was, how he deserved the opportunities one didn't, now I was supposed to be the one to step up. I made it clear to my dad exactly what I thought about that idea. I suggested he go talk to Jake instead, since he had always been the favorite anyway. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then my dad started to say something about how he regretted some of the choices he'd made, how he wanted to make things right, but I cut him off. I told him it was too little, too late. I'd spent years trying to earn his love and approval, and now that he needed something from me, he was ready to play the remorseful father. I ended the call shortly after that. I experienced a range of feelings as soon as I hung up. I turned him away, and part of me felt bad about it since he was still my father. But a bigger part of me felt relieved. For the first time, I had stood up for myself against him. I didn't cave into the need for his approval that had driven me for so long. The next few days were tough. I kept replaying the conversation in my head, wondering if I had done the right thing. I thought about all the times I needed aid and he wasn't there. Sure, it was the college tuition, but it was also the little moments when a child needed their father, school activities, girl advice, and learning to drive. He had been missing throughout. I remembered my first heartbreak. When I was 16, her name was Sarah, and I thought she was the one. We had been dating for 6 months when she broke up with me for one of the football players. I was devastated. I came home that day, eyes red from crying, and my dad was in his usual spot on the couch watching TV. He barely looked up when I walked in. I stood there for a moment, hoping he would ask what was wrong, but he just grunted and told me I was blocking the screen. I went to my room and cried myself to sleep that night, or the time I got my driver's license. Most of my friends' dads had taught them how to drive, but not mine. I had to beg my neighbor, Mr. Johnson, to teach me. When I finally passed the test, I came home excited to share the news. My dad was in the garage working on his car with Jake. I showed them my new license. Jake congratulated me, but my dad just nodded and went back to explaining something about the engine to Jake. I don't think he ever let me drive his car. Another thing that made me think was what kind of trouble he was in to need my money. My dad was always very proud, almost too much. It has to be important for him to reach out in this way. Even with everything, I was still a little worried about him. But then I thought about all the times I had been worried about my own future because I wasn't making enough money since I had to quit college. What did he care about then? I had to work things out by myself, which I did. I made my own life without his help. Why should I help him right now? I remembered the year I lived on my own after moving out. In order to start over, I moved to a new place where no one knew me. I got any job I could find and found a tiny studio room that I could barely afford. I cleaned during the day and worked as a bartender at night. I was always tired, but I was able to get through it on my own. When I got home from work at the bar some nights, my feet hurt and smelled like smoke and beer. I wondered if I had made a mistake. I could have put my pride aside, stayed home, and tried to work things out with my dad. But then I remembered being judged all the time and never feeling good enough, and I knew I had made the right choice. I started to feel better about my choice as the days went by. I understood that by not giving in to his request, I was finally giving him a handle on things. I wasn't the same kid he used to be able to ignore and push around. Today, I'm an adult. I choose for myself and I don't owe him anything. I couldn't help but be interested, though, what had exactly caused this to happen? What happened that Jake, the perfect child, couldn't or wouldn't help? There were times when I wanted to find out more about what was going on with my dad and my cousin, but I hesitated. Did I really want to open that can of worms? Was it worth potentially stirring up all that old pain and resentment? I thought about getting in touch with Jake's mom, my aunt. Even though she was sometimes cold, she was always nice to me. She might understand what's going on. The last time I saw her, though, was at a family get-together right before I left for work. She gave Jake a big hug and told him she was proud of him for getting into such a good college. She only gave me a weak smile and a pat on the shoulder when it was my turn to leave. I made up my mind not to call her. I'm still not sure what to do next. As I write this report, a part of me wants to forget about the past and keep focused on my own growth in life. On the other hand, I can't help but wonder what's going on between my dad and Jake now that I think about it. Only time will tell if I decide to look into it more or not. Update 2. It's been about a month since my last update, and a lot has happened. Despite my initial hesitation, my curiosity got the better of me. I decided to do some digging to find out why my dad suddenly needed help and why Jake wasn't stepping up. I started by reaching out to a few family friends who were still in touch with my dad. At first, they were reluctant to share much, but eventually I pieced together a pretty clear picture of what had been going on. I called Mrs. Peterson first. She had been my mom's best friend and had always been kind to me growing up. She seemed surprised to hear from me but was happy to chat. After some small talk, I steered the conversation toward my dad and Jake. Mrs. Peterson hesitated, then sighed deeply before starting to fill me in. Turns out that my dad had gone all in on supporting Jake, far beyond just paying for his college tuition. He had helped Jake with the down payment on a house, bought him a car, and even invested in a business venture Jake wanted to pursue. To do all this, my dad had taken out loans and maxed out his credit cards. He was drowning in debt, all for the sake of giving Jake the life he thought he deserved. Mrs. Peterson told me about a conversation she had with my dad a few years back. He had been bragging about Jake's successes, talking about how he was going to be a big-shot businessman one day. When she asked about me, my dad had just shrugged and said he hoped I was doing okay. The indifference in his voice had shocked her. Next, I reached out to my old neighbor, Mr. Johnson, the one who taught me how to drive. He had always been observant and filled me in on some of the more recent developments. Apparently, Jake had convinced my dad to invest in a startup he was launching with some college friends. It was some kind of tech company, but Mr. Johnson wasn't clear on the details. What he did know was that my dad had remortgaged the house to get the money for the investment. The kicker? Jake's new job, the one my dad had proudly boasted about, wasn't going as well as expected. The business venture had flopped, and Jake was now struggling to make ends meet himself. When my dad turned to him for help with the mounting debt, Jake apparently told him he couldn't spare anything right now. Mr. Johnson had overheard an argument between my dad and Jake just a few weeks ago. Jake had come over driving a flashy new car, and my dad confronted him about the failed business and the money he'd invested. Jake had yelled something about how it wasn't his fault the market had changed and that he'd pay my dad back when he could. Then he peeled out of the driveway, leaving my dad standing there looking utterly defeated. I have to admit, a part of me felt a twisted sense of satisfaction. After years of being compared to Jake, constantly hearing how I didn't measure up, it turned out that the golden child wasn't so golden after all. My dad had placed all his hopes and resources into Jake, and now those hopes had crumbled. But mostly I just felt tired. Tired of the endless drama, the lingering pain, and the constant what-ifs. I thought about how different things could have been if my dad had chosen to invest in me the way he did in Jake. Maybe I would have finished college, and perhaps I'd be in a completely different career today. But then again, maybe I wouldn't have learned the invaluable lessons I did about self-reliance and perseverance. I remembered the tough times after dropping out of college, how I juggled multiple jobs, often scraping by on ramen noodles and cheap coffee. I thought about the long nights I spent studying after exhausting shifts, driven by the determination to improve myself, even without the benefit of a formal education. It had been a hard journey, but it shaped me into the person I am today. I wasn't sure if I should tell my dad what I had learned. After some thought, I chose to text him. I told him I knew what was going on with Jake and the bill. I didn't offer to help, but I also didn't brag. What I really said was that I hoped he could see now that the decisions he made had effects on both of us. After a few hours, he answered. He said sorry and a lot of things in a long message. He told me that he knew he had been unfair to me, and that his grief over my mom's death had made him lose his temper. He talked about how proud my mom would have been of the man I'd become, even though he wasn't a great dad. He asked if we could get together and talk. I thought about that message for a long time before I decided what to do. I still had a little boy inside me that wanted his dad's love, so there was a part of me that wanted to say yes. I imagined a time when we'd get together, talk things out, and our relationship would be fixed magically. But as an adult who has had to work hard for everything, I knew better. I reflected on all the important milestones in my life that my father had missed, like my high school graduation, where I scanned the audience hoping to catch a glimpse of his face, only to feel the sting of disappointment. I thought about my first apartment, which I furnished with second-hand items and a lot of determination, and the promotion I recently received at the bookstore, a moment I had no one to share with except my friends. In the end, I decided to respond to my father, letting him know that I was not ready for a meeting. While I acknowledged his apology, I made it clear that words alone could not erase the years of neglect and favoritism I had endured. I expressed my need for time and space, and I told him that he needed to respect that boundary. I also made it abundantly clear that I would not be bailing him out financially. His decisions had brought him to this point, just as my decisions had led me to where I am now. It was not my responsibility to fix the mistakes he had made. As I sit here writing this update, I feel a sense of relief, not happiness exactly, but as if a weight has been lifted from my shoulders. For so long, I carried the burden of trying to earn my father's love, constantly questioning what was wrong with me that made him favor Jake. Now I realize it was never about me at all. It was about his own unresolved issues, his inability to cope with loss and grief. I am uncertain about what the future holds for my relationship with my father, or whether there will be any relationship at all. Perhaps one day we will have a genuine conversation about everything that has transpired. Perhaps not. For now, I am focusing on my own life and personal growth. I am continuing with my night classes, diligently working toward that degree. I am also building relationships with people who appreciate me for who I am, not for who they want me to be. Just last week, I helped my friend Sarah, not Sarah from high school, move into her new apartment. As we unpacked boxes and arranged furniture, it dawned on me that these connections, this chosen family, are what truly matter. Not the approval of someone who was never able to recognize my worth. Life is not always easy, but I am forging my own path, and for the first time in a very long time, I feel like I'm exactly where I'm meant to be. I do not know what tomorrow will bring, but I am confident that I will face it on my own terms, with the strength I have developed through years of self-reliance. That is something my father's favoritism can never take away from me. Now on to the next story. Story 9. My wife and I had an amazing relationship, but yesterday she told me she is a lesbian. Cuts deep, but I have to accept and face it. We've been together for 10 years, married for 4. She was and is the love of my life, and the thought of living life without her is unbearable. Yesterday morning, I woke up and noticed her sitting on the patio, crying. So, I obviously went to console her and figure out what was wrong. While fighting back tears, she managed to tell me that she's a lesbian and she's so sorry. She isn't attracted to me anymore, but she also doesn't want to leave me. I've always known she was into women as well, but it was never an issue for me. We've had quite a few threesomes with different women over the years, and they've all been amazing. I've even been fine with her exploring that side of herself with other women without me. I just wanted her to be happy and fulfilled. The entire day was spent either crying or talking about our now uncertain future. All the plans we had made about buying a home, travel, getting dogs and cats, and retirement went up in smoke. We had a fantastic sex life up until just a few days ago. We would have sex at least a few times a week, and we rarely failed to get each other off. We experimented and grew with each other over the years, exploring new kinks and figuring out new ways to please one another. I told her I didn't blame her, that if she really is a lesbian, it's not her fault and she hasn't really done anything wrong. But it doesn't make it hurt any less. She's my best friend. We have such a wonderful, supportive relationship, and we've been through so much together. I can't stand the thought of losing her and starting over. She said she doesn't want to believe me, that she still wants a future with me, just without the sex. But she also understands how unfair that is to me, so she's fine with me finding a buddy or two if I want. All I really want is her, though. I'm so insanely attracted to her, and I make sure to tell her so every day. She's the sexiest woman in the world to me, but finding out that attraction is one-sided has obviously shattered my heart and crippled my self-esteem. I don't know what to do. I'm certain most of the comments I get will be along the lines of move on, or the classic lawyer up, start hitting the gym. But I don't know if I'm strong enough to do that. I'm praying she's going to wake up and realize she made a mistake, that she's just overwhelmed and confused. Deep down, I know that's not how this works, but the wounds are still so fresh. I'm grasping at any little straws of hope I can find. We don't have any kids. All our pets have passed away, but we did just move into a new house last week, so we may be stuck together until next March at least. I just want my wife back. Comments where OP replies. Comment 1. This is why you're going to have to eventually leave. It's too much of a burden to live with. Can you imagine every day being so close to someone you love like that and being unable to be with them? Not just sex, I think you know what I mean. Can you imagine listening to her get off with someone else? It was hot when you were doing it as an activity together, but it'll be different going forward, right? Right now, you might be against hearing any advice to move on, and that's fine. But it's a special kind of hell you're about to enter. You won't even begin to heal until you've had a clean break and some time to process everything. Source: my brother's brother, his dad, and another woman's kid killed himself over something very close to what you're describing. OP. I appreciate hearing each and every bit of advice I get. The more perspectives, the better. Deep down, I know you're probably right, but goddamn if it doesn't hurt like hell to even think about. Comment 2. I will just say this. My ex tried to work it out with his lesbian wife because they had 2 babies to take care of. It did not work, and it probably made the divorce even that much worse. Either she's trying to soften the blow by telling you she wants to stay married and for you to have sex with other people, and then she'll end up leaving. Or she's trying to use you for emotional/financial support until she finds a partner. Either way is super unfair to you. I highly suggest counseling and to start talking about a physical separation so you can find yourself and give her a chance to find herself. OP. That's pretty much my biggest fear right now, that she'll eventually find someone and straight up leave me. Counseling and separation are probably the right call. Comment 3. Hi. I'm not the wife in this particular post, but my husband and I are going through the same thing right now. I can't speak on your wife's experience because I don't know her personally, but when it comes to my 10-year relationship with my husband, I struggled a lot with my sense of identity the entire time. I didn't know it had anything to do with my sexuality, but I knew that the experiences I had in childhood made me learn to be a people pleaser to protect myself. But once I was in an emotionally healthy environment, I realized I didn't know anything about myself. All I knew was that my husband was the only person that was safe. I started going to therapy to address my childhood, and that's how I came to learn about compulsory heterosexuality. It all kind of clicked from there. If there's one piece of advice that I can give you, it's that you couldn't have done anything to change the outcome. It's not fair to you that you fell in love with someone that can't be attracted to you in the same way. You deserve a wife that can give you 100% of herself. She also deserves to find someone that she can give 100% to. It's going to be a painful process, but we have to trust ourselves to do hard things. Good luck to you both. Up. This all sounds way too familiar. There are definitely some strong parallels between your life and hers, and I appreciate your advice. Update 1, 1 year later. Hola Reddit, long time no talk. I figured it was about time to update y'all on the roller coaster that has been the last year of my life. Allow me to start with a few apologies. Sorry for the jumbled mess that was my original post. I was a mess at that time, and apologies to everyone that reached out that I didn't get back to. There were a lot of you, and it became too much to continue replying with the same answers over and over. I appreciate every one of you that reached out with kind words and those that shared their similar experiences. 1 year ago today, I woke up and got out of bed blissfully unaware of the fact that my life was about to completely crumble around me. That morning, I found my wife on our back patio, clearly in distress. So obviously, I put on my best husband hat and went to figure out what the issue was. I assumed it was something work-related, but I was very wrong. While fighting back tears, she manages to tell me that she's a lesbian, and she's so very sorry. I'll never forget the feeling of the world closing in on me as the most intense fear, panic, confusion, and grief began to set in. Initially, she said she wasn't going to leave me, that we could do couples therapy and figure out a path forward together. Of course, I agreed. 3 days after receiving that news, I was informed by my mother that my stepdad was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. 3 days after that, I was told by my father that my stepmom was also diagnosed with skin cancer. Thankfully, my stepmom had surgery and is cancer-free, but my stepdad wasn't as fortunate. He passed away last November. He was a wonderful, funny, kind, successful, and impressive man, and I miss him a lot. Having all of these things hit me within a week caused me to completely spiral out of control. I refrained from going to work, couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. I merely existed. I became one with my couch and distracted myself with hockey podcasts and weed. My wife did her best to be there for me, but she was obviously going through her own turmoil, and she retreated into her own world, physically and emotionally, for a bit. For a bit of backstory, she had spent her life with crippling anxiety, and the mere thought of a tough conversation was enough to cause her to break down crying. But months prior to all this, she had begun taking anti-anxiety meds. So now she was finally able to communicate to me not only that she was gay, but all the other times I had let her down. 10 years worth of moments I had been inconsiderate or insufficient as a partner. I always thought we had communicated well, but apparently that was more one-sided. And I had always thought I did a wonderful job as a husband. I tried to be attentive, thoughtful, caring, and compassionate. I was never abusive or cheated. We rarely fought, and when we did, we always ended up talking it out like adults. I thought I was doing a great job, but I wasn't doing the things she needed out of a partner. But since she never communicated it to me, how was I to know? Hearing about all these little moments that I had let her down hurt like hell, but it also gave me a light at the end of the tunnel. A mission to save our marriage. I couldn't do anything about her being gay, but I could damn sure make up for every instance of neglect. I put together a plan to prove to her I was worth staying with. I surprised her with a picnic, got us tickets to the circus, made a reservation at a restaurant for the first time in my life, and took her for her favorite kind of food. I began learning French. She's French-Canadian. I took the lead on planning our next big vacation. I started writing her a song. I was going to give her guitar lessons since she had expressed interest in the past. I spent every minute of every day for the next 2 months figuring out ways to show her just how much she meant to me. She was also able to confess that she wanted children. We had agreed early on that kids weren't on the table, but she had a change of heart, and for her I would have absolutely done it, and I told her so numerous times. In May, she left the country for a girls' trip to the Dominican. It had been planned for at least a year. We agreed to go minimal contact during the week-long trip so she could get her head straight and really figure out what she wanted. We actually hooked up the day before she left, and it was the first time in 2 months I felt like everything was actually going to be okay. But the day she came home, she officially ended our marriage. Now, one of the toughest parts of this situation was we had just moved into a big new house with a few roommates on March 1st. Neither of us could afford to have her just move out right away. It would have screwed ourselves and our roomies over financially. We live in Vancouver, and it's bloody expensive here. So we figured out a system of sharing the room. There were even times where we would still share the bed, but it eventually became too painful. So I renovated the large shed in our backyard with a futon, air conditioning, and a TV, and basically lived in it all summer. She began dating someone, so as time went on, she was gone more and more until she had basically moved out but continued to pay rent during these months. So many people close to me went through tragedies too. One of my closest friends lost his mom to cancer. A good friend from high school lost his wife to cancer too. I had known her through work and got to see them begin their relationship, get married, and have a beautiful daughter, only for it to end so unbelievably tragically. And mere weeks before my stepdad's passing, my stepsister's longtime partner chose to end his life. The amount of grief I felt for myself and those close to me was unbearable, unfathomable. So much loss in such a short period of time. Every day for months I thought about ending it all, but kept going mostly because I couldn't do that to my parents. For all the bad that took place, there was actually some good. I quit my toxic but well-paying job in May due to being so overwhelmed and their lack of sympathy towards my situation. And that led me to find an absolute dream job a few months later. Now, I work as the quality control guy for a large music retailer's guitar department. I get to play, test, and fix guitars every day, and it's a dream come true. A few buddies and I entered a radio contest last summer and actually won it. We improvised a 30-second commercial, submitted it, and out of 80-plus entries, we won $10,000 in nationwide play. My ex-wife actually saw our commercial play on the big screen before a movie once. I started a stupid YouTube channel with a good friend doing dumb reaction videos. It's not even remotely successful yet, but it's a fun outlet. The Christmas prior to my wife coming out, she had bought me the Blu-ray box set of the entire Dragon Ball Z series, and somehow we managed to watch all of it before, during, and after the split. I'm quite proud of that for us. And finally, last November, I met someone really special. She was also out of a long-term marriage, and they had split for pretty much the same reason. We've been officially dating since New Year's Day. She's absolutely wonderful, beautiful, intelligent, successful, and an insanely talented artist. She's inspired me to start painting, and I've inspired her to take up guitar. We've been helping each other heal and enjoy life again. My ex and I are on good terms. We still care about one another and only want the best for each other. She was there when we saw my stepdad for the last time. She and my mom are still friendly, which honestly makes me really happy. And she officially moved out on March 1st of this year. It's been a wild ride from breaking down and bawling my eyes out 10 times a day to where I am now, with the best job I've ever had and a fun, promising new relationship. I truly didn't think I'd make it through, but I have. Thanks for reading, y'all. Comments where OP replies. Comment 1. Gez, same but different. My wife is a lesbian too. When I met her she was a lesbian, or so I thought. Turned out she was bi. Didn't bother me, we loved each other. Fast forward 13 years, we split amicably. Wasn't meant to be, and now she's a lesbian again. But she's still my best friend, and we have both supported each other through our pain and depression when we split. I promised myself I'd support her and the kids as best I could. 6 months later her grandma died. 1 year later her mom died. And another 6 months later her dad died. JFC, it's been a bloody roller coaster. I'm glad you've moved on to living a fantastic life. OP. Oh man, that's tough. Lots of respect for maintaining a friendship with her. I know how tough it can be. All the best. Comment 2. Damn OP, your resilience is crazily amazing. From your writing, aside from the issue with your ex and toxic workplace, I am assuming that your social relationship with friends and both parents are amazing. I am praying nothing but all the best for you. OP. I absolutely adore my parents. They're the sweetest, kindest, most loving people. And I have a wonderful circle of friends that have been there for me throughout all this. I don't know where I'd be without them all. Appreciate it. Now on to the next story. Story 10. Am I the a-hole for refusing to change my makeup and style because my friend thinks her husband has a crush on me? My 29F friend 31F has told me that her husband 35M has a crush on me and has recently told her that he fantasizes over me. This already makes me feel very awkward, but now she has asked if I can stop wearing makeup and wear baggy clothes around him. We went out for dinner last night at a reasonably expensive restaurant with a few others. 7 of us in total. And she texted me when I got home saying she was angry at me for looking hot after she asked me to not wear makeup. She's my friend and I want to do the right thing. But there's nothing I could wear that is baggy that would suit the restaurant we were in, Michelin star. My style is very conservative, and I was wearing a very average dress with heels. I've written out several responses ranging from an apology to being quite rude, but wanted to check my thoughts here before I go back to her. I don't want to make life difficult for her, but what she's asking for feels unreasonable. Edit 1. Thank you so much for all of your responses. It's 4:21 a.m. here in the UK, so I will write out and send a response tomorrow and will update you all on here. Sorry I can't respond to everyone. I didn't expect so many responses. Edit 2. While I was reading your responses, he just liked an old Instagram pic from way back, bikini pic. He is now blocked. Comment total NTA. For one thing, I don't think it's possible to dress appropriately for a nice restaurant without looking hot to someone who already finds you attractive. And more generally, as long as you're not hitting on the husband or intentionally dressing provocatively to catch his attention, which it sounds like you're not, then this is a her problem, not a you problem. Here's another point. Why on earth did she tell you that her husband has the hots for you? Completely inappropriate. This is something to be handled within the marriage. Up. I'm not sure why she told me either. The first time she said it, it was cute that he had a crush on me. Then she started getting a bit more detailed about it. OP is voted NTA. Date 1. Edit 3. I responded with the following. Sorry it's taken me a while to reply, but I wanted to consider this properly and not react emotively. I'm sorry you feel that way, but I don't think it's fair or reasonable to ask me to change how I look because of your husband. My advice is to speak to husband's name and work on your relationship, because projecting your issues onto me isn't going to help you, but it will damage our friendship. You have nothing to be insecure about. You're the most beautiful person inside and out I've ever met. I'm here for you if you want to talk through it, but ultimately I can't help it if I'm smoking hot. Just kidding. See. 5 minutes after I pressed send, she knocked on my door. She was already on her way with a bunch of flowers and cried and gave me a hug while apologizing. She told me they were having problems and it was wrong of her to take it out on me. We've had a long chat and I'm going to be there to support my friend. Thank you all for your input. You all helped so much. Additional info. I've had a lot of people message me asking if they can post my story elsewhere, and a couple of reporters, etc. I really don't want to exploit my friend's marriage, so I don't mind if you use it, but please keep me anonymous. Also, WTF? I can't believe so many people care or have an opinion about my boring issue. Now for comments. Comment 1. Love that the friend was already on her way to apologize with flowers. She knew she messed up, probably in a moment of emotion. Sounds like she has a husband problem. Bit of a boring update, but that's how you know it's real. Hope their friendship stays strong, and the friend and the nasty husband either get counseling or call it quits. Gross that he's creeping on his wife's friend's ancient bikini pic. Comment 2. I hope the friend gets a divorce and finds a partner who only has eyes for her. I hope she and OP remain close friends with a healthy friendship. I hope the husband stubs his toe on every corner in his living space. Comment 3. I hope this really is the end. Seems like the root issue is still far from resolved. Now on to the next story. Story 11. Mysterious bloodstains in my bed lead to a shocking discovery. Hidden black mold in my attic room causing my hay fever symptoms. Let me just start by saying that I am a man and so I don't get a period. I have been living on my own in Amsterdam for a while now. It's a nice little room in the attic. It's old, nice, and feels very cozy. I don't live in a dorm, but I live with an older lady who has 2 cats. I'm allergic to myself, so when those cats come this way, I chase them out the door. Now, I have a problem. A few days ago, I woke up with clothes on my closet turned over and clothes on the floor. Sleepwalking can happen. Now things are getting a little weird. On the entire left side of my double bed, from head to toe, there is a long trail of blood, as if something bloody has been running over it. This can't be the cats because they don't come into my room at night, and it also seems unlikely to me that an injured animal has been walking there, because if something bleeds that much, it should be visible somewhere else in the room, right? It also seemed unlikely to me that I myself bled a vertical trail in my sleep, but I didn't think anything else of it. I cleaned it up and that was that. But this morning, a few days later, I woke up blood everywhere again on that side of the bed, and with blood everywhere, I really mean a trail you can't miss, and the smell. I woke up because of the smell, and not even my alarm clock at 6:30. I went to ask the housewife what she thinks this could be. She smiled for a moment and said, "Maybe your room is haunted." Well, that didn't make it better. I'm now sitting in the bathroom scrubbing that sheet again and trying not to throw up. I don't know what's going on here, but could this be a weird hazing problem? And by that, I mean student hazing. Is this a normal thing they do in Amsterdam, smear blood on your bed? I'm just saying, I'm from Brussels. I know there are weird things happening here. I don't get it at all, especially because I've scanned my whole body and there are no wounds anywhere. Has anyone experienced something similar? Is my room genuinely possessed? Sorry if this is a stupid question, but I'm kind of done with it. Now for some comments. Comment 1. Have read this before. Someone who had bled from his ears. You don't often see that, so it's logical that you don't see a wound. Have your ears checked and place a camera if you're not sure. Maybe just block the door on the inside or something. OP. I'm definitely going to do that, good idea. I'll ask the doctor right after class today to schedule an appointment. Comment 2. Please go get a carbon monoxide meter from Action/Praxis. Those things are 15 euros. Nausea and smelling things that aren't there, you mentioned sulfur, are both symptoms of carbon monoxide poisoning, plus the fact that this is happening in winter, so you probably have more heating/stove on than normal. OP, I'm pretty scared of this now. I just checked the symptoms online and they do match. I'm going straight to the hardware store after class. Starting to get nervous about this. Haha. Comment 3. Perhaps something about bed bugs that you roll flat in your sleep after they feed? Yuck. It's on the comforter though. Don't think I rolled over them, but could have been an answer. Comment 4. You specifically mentioned that the first time that you woke up with clothes on, different clothes therefore than you had fallen asleep with. Were there other weird things this morning or just blood? Yes, different clothes than what I went to bed with. I went to sleep in my pajamas, logical, and I woke up with my sweater and jeans on. I have never walked before this morning, only blood. Thank God. Otherwise, I would have scheduled an appointment with the psychologist. Update 1. Few days later. For the past few days, I've been staying at my friend's house to see if it's mysteriously bleeding there too. I ordered a camera and nothing happened. Until yesterday morning. I went back home, went to the doctor on the way because I suffer from hay fever, and once home just checked the cats for being in heat. Turns out they're both male, unfortunately. I set up the camera in a can, thanks to whoever advised that, and went into the space behind my room with a CO detector to measure it. The second I got in there, I smelled a very familiar smell. Exactly the smell that vaguely smelled like blood. Now that I know what it is, I would associate it more with meat, but the smell of blood came very close anyway. I grabbed the CO detector, shirt in front of my nose, and put that thing to work. Nothing wrong. Anyway, I called my friend because the smell was very specific. She was there within an hour and she too thought it smelled very strangely of blood. It's a large attic which smells of blood and rotted flesh, and there are things everywhere in the dark. Of course, my imagination ran wild. My girlfriend also started to get the jitters, and after an hour of pondering, we decided to call the police. Well, they showed up on my doorstep after 4 hours, and together we went upstairs. The police also smelled the odor, and it was so convincing that some other special agents were called in before they went up into the attic. Very long story short, after a long wait and search, they didn't find a body, but they did find mold all over the wall against my room, under the baseboards, on the roof, black mold everywhere. Immediately relieved that my landlord wasn't a murderer, but black mold isn't a fun joke either. In the meantime, I've moved all my stuff and am temporarily living with my girlfriend until the problem is solved. Even then, I don't know if I'll go back because the landlord wasn't very happy that I kind of suspected her of murder, but that's another story. It's funny because, as the doctor said when I came in with my hay fever, it's remarkable that you're suffering from it now. He was right. The itchy eyes, the nosebleed in my sleep. Yes, it turned out to be a nosebleed. The sleepwalking, the tired days, everything in place. End of story. I do want to thank you all individually for your kind messages and earnest attempts to help. Thanks to you, I went behind the room to check that meter. I wonder if I would have found out about the fungus if I hadn't. Thanks so much, really. Now for some comments. Comment 1. I get it's not as bad as a body, but the thought of there being black mold all around me in the walls growing day after day is still skin-crawling awful. And I wish more people realized how hay fever and other allergies is and how many symptoms there are. I think people think it's just sneezing a bit, not the weeks of misery US experience. Comment 2. The lady's reaction of, maybe your room is haunted, makes me feel like she knew there was a problem but they just didn't want to deal with it. Which is why the landlord is unhappy since now the authorities are involved. They have no choice but to clean it up. We have reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us your thoughts about the stories in the comments section. Thank you and see you in the next video.